Here we go again. If you've been a fan of my channel for a while, you might have checked out my Tekken retrospective playlist where I covered the entire Tekken series from 1 to 6. Let's have a quick review. Back in 1993, Namco scooped up some talent from Sega who had just released a new fighting game called Virtua Fighter. Among them was Seiichi Ishii, the designer who would go on to direct the first and second Tekken games. After those two successes, Kishiro Harada took over as director and led the franchise for many years. He directed Tekken 3, a game that is still beloved today. When the series moved to the PlayStation 2 era with Tekken 4, it divided fans with its different tone but gained a cult following for its music and atmosphere. Then, Namco pulled out all the stops to win fans back with Tekken 5, the last game on the PlayStation 2. As we moved to the PlayStation 3, Tekken 6 became the only numbered entry added to the 7th generation, and to everyone's surprise, Namco made it a multi-platform and revamped the story mode with Scenario Campaign. This change divided fans, but the game was still a hit despite some shortcomings. Now, here's the kicker. Tekken 6 was released for home consoles in 2009, and the next entry didn't come out until 2017. That is an 8-year gap, making the next game a long-awaited sequel. Welcome back to the Retro Phantoms Retrospective. Today, we're jumping back into the ring with Tekken 7.
私は平八さんを止めないといけないのです。たとえこの力に飲まれ命を失うことになったとしても。
Before we kick things off this year, I want to wish you all a happy new year and thank every single one of you for tuning in. I've got some exciting updates for you. I'm planning to start a few new series on this channel and upload more often. With Grand Theft Auto 6 releasing at the end of the year, I'm launching the Rockstar Takeover. We'll be diving into retrospectives for many Rockstar titles, from Midnight Club and Bully to the Grand Theft Auto series. Additionally, if you're unaware, a Mortal Kombat film is coming out this year. I'm a huge fan of the franchise, so simultaneously while the Rockstar retrospectives are coming out, a few Mortal Kombat retrospectives will be coming out as well. I'll be covering Mortal Kombat's catalog from the very first entry in 1992 all the way to Mortal Kombat X. So, if you're a fan of video game retrospectives or just love gaming facts, I encourage you to punch that subscribe button and kill the notification bell so you won't miss out on any new content this year. Let's dive into this.
Before we get into the history of Tekken 7, we need to rewind a bit. The year is 2010 and people are speculating as to when the next numbered entry of Tekken will be dropping. To stop eager fans from requesting another entry in Tekken, 2 other games are rumored. In the summer of 2010 at Comic-Con, both Capcom producer Yoshinori Ono and Tekken producer Kishiro Harada had a crossover called Street Fighter Cross Tekken that was announced with a teaser trailer featuring Street Fighter's Ryu facing down Tekken's Kazuya Mishima in a pre-rendered sneak peek. Harada followed that playable matchup with an announcement of his own, confirming that Tekken Cross Street Fighter is also in development at Namco. That game is set to play in the style of Tekken, where contestants fight in a 3D arena. Fans were eager to get their hands on this crossover game, as Capcom was known as a king of crossovers. Fans will have to wait 2 years, as in 2012, Street Fighter Cross Tekken was released for the Sony PS3, Xbox 360, Windows, iOS, and PlayStation Vita. Now, overall, it seems to have done well with critics, and since they are 2 of the biggest fighting franchises of all time, selling this game would be a cakewalk. Critics loved this game while fans of the respective series were minced about the game's reception. This game created a huge sense of controversy by having certain characters behind paywalls. This is seen in an article from Ian Dransfield. He stated that, "See, it's been discovered that Capcom has included all the DLC characters from Street Fighter Cross Tekken on the disc. The disc you purchase from the store contains all of the content that you would be expected to pay extra for if you want to use it on the disc. If you're paying around £50 to buy the game, then you're repaying a few extra quid to be able to access what you've already paid for." While this game did great commercially among fans, it was not what they expected, as some people were biased to Tekken where others were biased to Street Fighter. It had a hard time mixing. Now, if you remember me saying 2 games, here's the other one. On September 17, 2010, Harada made a cryptic tweet saying, "TGS, September 18th Saturday at Tokugay booth, I'll announce something." Since Harada announced that Tekken Cross Street Fighter was going to be a thing after Street Fighter Cross Tekken, people speculated whether it would be Tekken 7 or something else. Well, by this time, fans couldn't wait to hear the good news. And so, it was announced that both game speculations were wrong, and the game announced by Harada was none other than Tekken Tag Tournament 2. So, this was somewhat surprising, as the first one was released for arcades way back in 1999. For those who do not know, Tekken Tag Tournament was a non-canonical Tekken game featuring every Tekken character from 1 to 3, excluding Gon from Tekken 3. Every character was playable, be it Ogre, Tiger, to even Devil and Angel. Now, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was planned to be released between Street Fighter Cross Tekken and Tekken Cross Street Fighter. It must be noted that this game would do better with both fans and critics alike. Sadly, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 almost killed the franchise due to the fact that the sales weren't what they were expecting. Unlike Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Tekken Tag Tournament didn't have the characters behind the paywall, but there was DLC. To the surprise of many, it was completely free. Not capitalizing on DLC definitely affected the financial capitalization of the Tekken franchise. Now that we know the state of Tekken around this time, we can finally look at the development status of the next game. The story behind Tekken 7's development begins with a situation that skyrocketed its momentum while putting the development team under immense pressure: a leak. During the summer of 2013, rumors started to circle the web about new arcade boards based on the PlayStation hardware. Among the chatter was a board called System 478, which was reportedly built on PlayStation 4 technology. With the news getting out, Japanese message boards lit up discussing upcoming titles for the hardware in question. But one comment in particular stole the show: a new number entry in the Tekken series. As one person said in the chat room, one of the titles listed is an exhibition title to demonstrate this new arcade board is Tekken 7, meaning we may potentially see the latest number entry in the series very shortly. Tekken 6 was released in arcades back in 2007, so one might say we're due for a new entry by now. While fans were curious about Tekken 7, their excitement was equally tied to another teased project, Tekken Cross Street Fighter, the long-awaited crossover. Spoiler alert, that game still hasn't been released. I might just have to do a retrospective on the game that never was. If that's something you'd like to see, drop a comment down below. Keep the Street Fighter connection in mind, though it'll come up again later in this video. Anyway, back to Tekken 7. What helped this leak simmer down was the game's director, Kishiro Harada, neither confirming nor denying said rumors. For a while, things were quieted down, until about a year later in July 2014. Harada was in Las Vegas, Nevada to attend the EVO tournament when disaster struck. A video of the game leaked on July 13, 2014, ahead of the official announcement. According to a news article, looks like the rumor was true. A leaked IGN news video published by AOL.com video ahead of tonight's official announcement reveals Tekken 7 will be powered by Unreal Engine 4 and launched for current gen consoles. The leak forced Harada's hand. That evening, he took to the stage at EVO. As he put it, I was surprised waking up and seeing the news all of a sudden. The first thought that came to my head, it must have been Capcom's Yoshinori Ono. But the greatest surprise is that it wasn't the title I was planning to announce today. Since it leaked, I have no choice but to announce that certain title. I didn't have anything prepared like a trailer, so I had to go back to my hotel room and throw something together for you guys.
その複数のうちの一つのタイトルがリークしていました。
However, I was quite surprised waking up this morning to find that one of those titles was leaked.
最初朝起きた時はオノチンが勝手にリークしたんじゃないかと一瞬思ってしまいました。
You know, I'm surprised just waking up and seeing this news all of a sudden. First thought that came in my head was, it must have been Ono.
はい、まあでも実はですね、皆さんそのリークしたタイトルを見て僕非常に驚きました。実はですね、今日発表する予定だったタイトルと違うものがガーンとリークされてました。
But, you know, the greatest surprise that it wasn't the title I was planning to announce today.
ね、なんですけど、そのリークのせいで、それが非常に会社で問題になってしまい、そのタイトルを今日発表せざるを得なくなりました。なんで、実はトレーラーを用意してなかったので、先ほど慌てて僕が朝、編集して、そのトレーラーを作りましたので、それを発表したいと思います。
But, you know, since it is leaked, I have no choice but to announce that certain title. But I didn't have anything prepared, like a trailer or any kind of fancy stuff. So I had to go back to my hotel room right away when I found out and put something together for you guys.
はい。皆さん、こういうリークがあった時のお約束分かりますよね。お約束、ルールがありますよね。
So, you guys, you know how it's supposed to be when there's a leak and what you're supposed to do, right?
このトレーラーの最後にタイトルがドーンと出てきます。タイトルが出てきたらみんな知らなかったふりをしてすごく盛り上がってください。歓声を上げてください。
So, we're going to show you the trailer. You'll see the title logo at the end. Act like you never heard about it. And then just, explode.
本当に僕の会社で非常に今日本で大問題になってますんで、皆さんの歓声でごまかすしかありません。なのでぜひよろしくお願いします。
So I have a lot to explain to the company back in Japan, so if you can kind of help me out with that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
はい、それではご覧ください。トレーラーです。
Check out the trailer!
When Tekken 7 officially announced, Namco had to act fast in order to keep the fans engaged and not have long gaps between titles. To help with the rollout, Namco had done location tests in Osaka, Japan back in October 2014. Players got to try the game and get a feel for how updated mechanics will work on the new hardware. If you're new to my Tekken retrospectives, you may not be aware that arcade releases typically precede home console launches by many months. These tests help refine the arcade version and build anticipation for the broader rollout. As with prior Tekken games, tournaments played a major role in hyping the title. In January 2015, Namco hosted a series of 3-on-3 tournaments entitled Tekken Crash. To reach a worldwide audience, the events were streamed online, giving fans from around the world a first look at the new entry. Finally, on March 18, 2015, Tekken 7 hit Japanese arcades. A year later, an updated version, Tekken 7 Fated Retribution, hit the arcades with new characters, mechanics, and content. Now that we covered the arcade phase, let's move on to the most critical aspect of Tekken 7, its home release. Namco announced at E3 2016 that Tekken 7 will launch for home consoles in 2017. A trailer shown during the event showcased several of the features from Fated Retribution, including graphical updates, new stages, and a cinematic story with integrated cutscenes and dialogue during battles. Years of development and anticipation later, Tekken 7 launched on June 2nd, 2017.
今ここで和美殿との約束 果たそうぞ。霞の名を。貴様、何者じゃ。我は剣を清めし者なり。おお、ならば言葉はいらぬな。これも定め。貴様をここで終わらせる。
Here is a quick spoiler alert, as I'm about to give insight into the characters as well as the narrative of Tekken 7. There will be light spoilers for all the other Tekken entries as the story builds. If you're not a fan of spoilers, please advance to the gameplay overview section as seen on the timeline below. Let's dive into this. So Tekken takes an interesting approach in telling the narrative. This time the story is told from someone else's perspective. The story is recounted through the first-hand account of an unnamed journalist. Throughout this section, I will be referring to him as the journalist. The story opens up with a prologue that sets the stage for the emotional and intense journey ahead. The journalist begins by reflecting on his life with his son, showing a heartfelt letter from the boy expressing his love for his father. This tender moment is juxtaposed with a letter from Kazuya to Heihachi stating,
"Father, one day, I will tear you to pieces."
The contrast between these letters sets the tone for the Mishima family's dark and turbulent history. From here, the story flashes back to a pivotal moment in the Mishima saga. A young, grieving Kazuya confronts his father, Heihachi, on what appears to be a mountaintop. Kazuya is consumed by rage, mourning the loss of his mother at Heihachi's hands. Despite his anger, the 5-year-old is no match for his father and is easily defeated. Heihachi then delivers the infamous act that defines their fractured relationship. He throws Kazuya off a cliff. The narrative then jumps to the present, picking up where Tekken 6 left off. Jin Kazama, after his climactic battle with Azazel, has disappeared. The world is searching tirelessly for him, scouring the desert for any sign of life or evidence of his demise. Meanwhile, the Mishima Zaibatsu is left in chaos, its leadership void as Jin remains missing. Amid this turmoil, Heihachi Mishima seizes the opportunity to reclaim the power he once held. One night, with the Zaibatsu in disarray, Heihachi storms back into the fold, reclaiming the seat of power that was once his.
久しぶりよのこの場所に立つ。 陣を失った財閥が混乱する様子が手に取るようにわかるわい。
We now enter the first chapter of the story, titled King of Iron Fist Returns. The chapter begins with the journalist recalling a devastating day from his past. While reporting from a battlefield covering the war ignited by Jin Kazama, he received an email that left him paralyzed. His hometown had been completely destroyed by the conflict, reduced to nothing more than a battleground of chaos. For the journalist, this meant the life he left behind was gone. His wife and son were casualties of war. This event marked the start of his descent into hatred and bitterness towards Jin Kazama. The narrative then shifts back to the Mishima Zaibatsu. The organization discusses how G Corporation, emboldened by Jin's absence, has intensified its attacks. Suddenly, alarms sound throughout the Zaibatsu compound. Heihachi Mishima has returned. Heihachi fights his way through countless Zaibatsu soldiers while ascending in an elevator at the top. He faces and defeats Nina Williams. After besting her, Heihachi delivers a commanding speech, asserting that the Zaibatsu has lost its way with Jin gone, and only his leadership can restore it to its former glory. Acknowledging the truth in his words, Nina offers no further resistance and accepts Heihachi's return to power. With his authority reinstated, Heihachi declares the start of a new tournament, the King of Iron Fist.
久しぶりだな、全世界の諸君。わしがここに映っている意味がわかるか。いいよ、三島財閥は再び我が手に戻った。ということはもうわかるであろう。全世界の格闘家たちに次ぐザ・キング・オブ・アイアンフィストトーナメントの開催をここに宣言する。
Excuse me, sir. Just now, Heihachi
知ってい
Mishima.
る。平八。やはり生きていたか。
Why on earth would you want to hold a tournament now, like this?
説明は後じゃ。出立の準備をせい。おたおたするな。見ておれ。間もなくすべての舞台が整う。
Following this dramatic announcement, the story moves into Chapter 2, Blazing Vengeance. The journalist reflects on the world's reaction to Heihachi's challenge, noting how it caused a ripple effect across the globe. Despite this, he remains haunted by the destruction of his hometown and is determined to uncover who was truly responsible. Another reporter approached the journalist, sharing vital intel. G Corporation and the Zaibatsu have been locked in conflict, with the public largely blaming the Zaibatsu for initiating the war, leading to widespread support for G Corp. The reporter then reveals information about the Jack 4 robots, shifting the story to the events of Tekken 5. After the conclusion of Tekken 4, Heihachi and Kazuya regain consciousness in the dojo, only to be ambushed by a swarm of Jack 4 robots. The father and son duo work together to fend them off, but Kazuya ultimately betrays his father, throwing Heihachi in the fray before escaping as a bomb detonates. The story returns to the present, showing a still image of a vengeful Kazuya resolutely seeking revenge against Heihachi.
この代償はきっちり払ってもらうぞ。
Now we enter Chapter 3, The Serious Marksman. The story shifts back to the journalist, who pieces together how the explosion at the dojo involving the Jack 4 robots served as the catalyst for the war that ultimately claimed his family. He relics on how the media framed the incident as an unfortunate accident, downplaying its severity. Even the systematic elimination of G Corporation members was dismissed as mere coincidence. Through his investigation, the journalist uncovers that G Corporation's initial objective was to eliminate Kazuya, a mission that ultimately failed. This failure led Kazuya to stage a coup, seizing control of G Corporation for himself. After the journalist's revelations, the story transitions to an airplane en route to Italy. On board are Nina and Heihachi, who are traveling with a specific goal: to confront the Serious Marksman, a historic society of exorcists that holds significant influence across Europe. Heihachi's plan to secure their allegiance, knowing that if Kazuya's true nature as devil is revealed, the serious marksman support could prove invaluable. Upon arriving in Italy, Nina and Heihachi launched an assault on the Sirius headquarters, culminating in a confrontation with Claudio, the world's most powerful exorcist. Claudio is staunchly opposed to aiding the Zaibatsu, resulting in a fierce battle between him and Heihachi. After his victory, Heihachi reveals a crucial truth. His son, Kazuya, is a devil.
そうじゃ。わしは正真正銘人間様だ。しかし、わしの息子和也は違う。
Questo demone. Vuoi davvero opporti a un simile abominio?
じゃから再三通告したはず。わしとお前の目的は同じ。共にデビル討伐を目論むものじゃと。拳での決着はついた。貴様には世論の先導に一役買ってもらうぞ。
The narrative then progresses into Chapter 4, Overwhelming Power. The journalist reflects once more, describing his time delving into research on G Corporation, Kazuya, and the Mishima Zaibatsu. During this investigation, he uncovers two pivotal names, Jinpachi Mishima, Heihachi's father, and Jin Kazama, Heihachi's successor and instigator of the war. Armed with this knowledge, the journalist fantasizes about one day confronting and ending Jin himself. Back at the Zaibatsu, Heihachi focuses on locating Jin. Claudio, having reluctantly allied with the Zaibatsu after the earlier events, joins the search. He shares intel about reports of something inhuman spotted in the Far East, which Heihachi interprets as a potential sign that Jin is still alive. Orders are issued to extract Jin at any cost. The story then shifts to a plane transporting Jin to the United Nations headquarters. During the fight, Jin's devil gene activates, causing chaos. We see him wandering through a desert, pursued by soldiers who attempt to apprehend him, only for his devil powers to fully awaken and devastate his attackers.
Freeze!
Sometime later, Jin is aimlessly walking through a bustling marketplace, suffering from memory loss. Soldiers once again attempt to capture him, but to everyone's surprise, Lars Alexanderson intervenes. Stepping out of a car, Lars quickly neutralizes the soldiers and rescues Jin. Back at the Zaibatsu, Heihachi and his team observe reports of Jin's reappearance in the Middle East. This revelation leaves Claudio puzzled, wondering about the inhuman presence initially reported in the Far East.
Lars?
ほう、奴もジンを狙っていたのか。
Things just got a whole lot more complicated.
すぐさま追跡部隊を向かわせます。
No, there's no point. We'll have to stay one step ahead.
Ma se l'essere disumano in Estremo Oriente non era Jin, chi era? O cosa era?
Now we're at Chapter 5, System of Hatred. The story picks up with the journalist following a critical lead that unveils a pivotal name, Kazumi Hashicho. Through his research, he discovers that Kazumi was Kazuya Mishima's mother. He pieces together a timeline noting that the year Kazumi was deleted coincided with the founding of the Mishima Zaibatsu and Kazuya being thrown off a cliff. This connection leaves the journalist questioning the larger implications of this revelation. Meanwhile, back at G Corporation, Kazuya is seen in his office, listening as one of his subordinates reports that Heihachi is actively searching for Jin Kazama.
We have a handle on Heihachi Mishima's movements. It appears he is conducting a thorough search for Jin Kazama.
ジンを使う気か。作戦の準備を急がせろ。
Chapter 6, titled Awakening, we find the journalist who tracked down Li Xiaolan, finding him in a restaurant. Seeking information about the Mishima Zaibatsu, He approaches Lee, and after their conversation, they leave the restaurant together. Once outside, the two formally introduce themselves, setting the stage for a deeper exchange. The scene then transitions to Violet Systems, where Alyssa Boshanovich reawakens after being shut down. However, her distorted memories compel her to attack Lee, mistaking him for a threat. A battle ensues, with Lee ultimately emerging victorious. This confrontation triggers Alyssa's memories to return, and she recalls Lee as the eccentric CEO she once worked with.
今の刺激で記憶システムもまともになったのではないかな。
あ、まさかあなたは。変な社長さんのリー。なんとか。
変なは余計だが。あとリー・チャオランだ。まあ思い出してくれて光栄だ。
でもなぜあなたが私を。私は一体。
なるほど。完全回復とまではいかなかったか。
Chapter 7, called The Onslaught, the journalist's journey continues as he sits down with Lee, who shares personal insights about his connections to Kazuya and Heihachi. Lee reveals that he was adopted by Heihachi, and he divulges secrets about the Mishima family's cursed bloodline, details that the journalist could never uncover through traditional research. After their conversation, the story returns to Violet Systems. Lee is speaking with Alyssa, who now has her full memories restored. She recalls her final orders and even recognizes Large Alexanderson. As they prepare to leave, the two are ambushed by Tekken 4 soldiers. Alyssa springs into action, swiftly dismantling the soldiers one by one. Eventually, Lee joins the fray, tracking down the remaining attackers. Together, they make their escape. Meanwhile, back at the Mishima Zaibatsu, Heihachi is furious with the Tekken Force's failure. Nina Williams recognizes that this is a mission she must handle personally.
鉄拳衆の質も落ちたものよの。失敗すれば次はないと思え。
I'll have to handle this myself. Do you have the target in your sights?
捕捉できています。
Prepare the SWAT team. I'm going in.
Now we enter Chapter 8, A Visitor Calls. The story resumes with the journalist's conversation with Lee, who reveals the real reason for his exile from the Mishima Zaibatsu, suspicion that he knew the truth about Kazuya's devil gene. The journalist, convinced by Lee's account, travels to Kyoto to delve deeper into the history of the Hachijo household and their connection to devils. In Kyoto, he encounters an older gentleman who once served the Hachijo family. Though the man has limited information about the family and their ties to the devils, he shares a haunting nursery rhyme before departing.
赤い川では水遊び川が流れた先にも鬼さんどこまで続くやこの鬼遊び
The rhyme leaves the journalist pondering its cryptic meaning. He theorizes that the demon symbolizes a mysterious power, red represents blood, and the river is a metaphor for the family's bloodline. This revelation fills him with a sense of dread as he begins to grasp the horrific implications. The story shifts to the Mishima estate, where a shocking visitor arrives, Akuma from Street Fighter. Akuma challenges Heihachi to a fierce battle, eventually defeating him. During their clash, Heihachi realizes that the inhumane entity Claudio mentioned in Chapter 4 is actually Akuma. As the fight concludes, G Corporation sends an army of Jack's 6 robots to attack both Heihachi and Akuma. After fending them off, Akuma formally introduces himself, revealing his mission to eliminate both Heihachi and Kazuya at the behest of Kazumi, Heihachi's deceased wife and Kazuya's mother. This revelation leads to a second battle between Akuma and Heihachi, with Heihachi narrowly winning before Akuma lands a devastating final blow, leaving Heihachi missing. Kazuya watches these events unfold on the screen, laughing as a defense mechanism against the painful realization that his mother wanted him eliminated. While her intentions trouble him momentarily, his focus shifts to the mystery of Akuma's identity and the immense power he wields.
とんだ茶番だ。それにしてもあの男、何か気のような力を放っているのか。
Moving on to chapter 9 titled Plan E, the journalist returns from his journey to find the war escalating further. He learns that Lee's violent system has been attacked. Contacting the journalist, Lee advises him to seek out Lars Alexanderson for his investigation. This scene transitions to Lee and Alyssa walking through a corridor in search of Lars. Suddenly, Lars appears reuniting with a walking, talking Alyssa. Overjoyed, Alyssa leaps into Lars' arms with a big hug. As they continue their search, the group discovers Jin Kazama in a coma. While they discuss Jin's condition, Tekken Force soldiers arrive. Alyssa rushes to protect Jin but is intercepted by Nina Williams, who seemingly appears out of nowhere. The two engage in an intense fight with Alyssa emerging victorious. In desperation, Nina throws a grenade, causing Alyssa to fall. Nina seizes the opportunity, ordering Tekken Force to retrieve Jin's body. As Tekken Force begins their extraction, Alyssa recovers and launches another assault on Nina. The second battle ends with Alyssa victorious once more. However, unbeknownst to Nina, the operation was a ruse orchestrated by Lee. While Nina and Tekken Force focus on Alyssa, Lee disables the soldiers and secures Jin's body. He, Lars, and Alyssa escape the facility, and it's destroyed in a massive explosion, leaving Nina and Tekken Force trapped inside.
爆破する作戦だったのか。無事にジンも運び出せた。異論はないはずだが。まあ、修繕費は三島財閥に利子をつけて払ってもらう。心配無用さ。
ジン、お前にはまだやってもらわなければならないことがある。こんなところで終わらせるわけにはいかないんだ。
What do they hope to achieve by sheltering Jean? This could be interesting to watch.
Now we arrive at chapter 10, False Rumors. The journalist finally meets Lars Alexanderson face to face. During their conversation, Lars reveals his connection to Heihachi, explaining that he is Heihachi's illegitimate child. His birth was meant to prove that Heihachi's bloodline did not carry the devil gene. Meanwhile, Lars and Lee discuss recent developments, and during this conversation, Lars mentions Jin Kazama's location has been discovered. This revelation stirs conflicted emotions in the journalist, who harbors a deep hatred for Jin, even fantasizing about being the one to eliminate him. However, what shocks him is hearing Lars declare, For the first time, the journalist begins to understand Jin's critical role in restoring peace in a world raged by war. The scene shifts back to the Mishima estate, where Heihachi, once again defying death, reemerges after his battle with Akuma. Now back at the Zaibatsu, Heihachi strategizes his next move, focusing on eliminating Kazuya, knowing Akuma will also target him. When Heihachi learns of the Tekken Force's complete failure to secure Jin, he decides to turn his setbacks into an advantage. He announces plans to cancel the King of Iron Fist tournament and stage his own death, ensuring the world believes he is gone. This deception allows him to operate in the shadows. Later, Akuma arrives at G Corporation, preparing to confront Kazuya.
そしてジンの線が断たれた。なるほど。これは面白い筋書きができそうじゃ。今すぐ全世界にわしが死んだという情報を流せ。大会も中止じゃ。
Now entering chapter 11 titled Judgment from Above. The journalist, now with Lars, discovers Jin Kazama in an unconscious state. Overwhelmed by rage and hatred, the journalist grabs a screwdriver, ready to delete Jin. Before he can act, Lars intervenes, explaining Jin's importance. Lars admits he also once had thoughts of eliminating Jin, but now understands that Jin is the key to ending the war. Reluctantly, the journalist sets aside his murderous intent. Back at the Mishima Zaibatsu, Heihachi and his team plot their next move. They decide to let Akuma fight Kazuya, believing the battle will force Kazuya to reveal his devil form to survive. By broadcasting the fight worldwide, they aim to expose Kazuya as a devil, turning public opinion in favor of the Zaibatsu. Meanwhile, at G Corporation, Kazuya watches a news report proclaiming Heihachi's death. As he processes the information, an alert interrupts the broadcast. Akuma has arrived. Instead of ordering his forces to repel Akuma, Kazuya instructs them to let him through the rooftop. On the rooftop, Kazuya confronts Akuma, demanding to know his connection to Kazumi. Akuma quickly reveals that Kazumi once saved his life. The tension escalates and a brutal fight ensues. Akuma defeats Kazuya, forcing him to transition into his devil form. The battle continues, with Devil Kazuya unleashing his immense power, but Akuma once again regains the upper hand. Unbeknownst to Kazuya, the Mishima Zaibatsu has been secretly recording the fight. Multiple camera angles capture Kazuya's transformation, ensuring the world will witness the truth. In a shocking turn of events, Heihachi executes his ultimate plan. Using a satellite-controlled nuke, he destroys the G Corporation building, obliterating everything as Akuma and Kazuya's fight rages on. In Chapter 12 titled The Sun Sets, the journalist watches intently as the Zaibatsu's plan unfolds on the screen. Their broadcast successfully exposes the shocking truth. Kazuya Mishima is in fact Devil. The revelation shifts public opinion dramatically, with the Mishima Zaibatsu suddenly seen as heroes celebrated for supposedly eliminating Kazuya. For the first time, the journalist realizes that this war transcends human conflict. It's a battle between supernatural forces. Meanwhile, at G Corporation, Kazuya is revealed to have survived the devastating blast that leveled the building. While the world believes him deceased, Heihachi seizes the opportunity to sever his alliance with Claudio, who curses Heihachi, labeling him a monster. From the shadows, Kazuya watches as G Corporation's reputation crumbles. With public support shifting towards the Zaibatsu, enraged and calculating, Kazuya uses his devil beam to target the satellite responsible for the attack on G Corp's building. The beam obliterates the satellite, sending its remains hurtling towards Earth. This action triggers chaos. An unknown informant frames Zaibatsu for destroying its own satellite, reversing the public's newfound admiration. The world begins to question the Zaibatsu's motives once more, allowing Kazuya to have the last laugh.
何事じゃ?
衛星兵器が地球へ向け落下しています。
An unknown informant has claimed the Mishima Zaibatsu downed its own satellite. Look, there it is. It's really fallen.
どういうことじゃ?
We have to get out of here. Move! Move! The Mishima Zaibatsu satellite has crash landed. Scenes of chaos unfolding.
まさか、和也。Heihachi, 貴様は俺を超えられん。
In Chapter 13 titled Truth, Heihachi Mishima finds himself on the defensive. The world blames the Zaibatsu for the catastrophic satellite crash, which destroyed an entire town. Heihachi curses Kazuya's name, realizing this public relations disaster might be irreversible. The journalist documents the aftermath of the tragedy, noting how the world is now less concerned with Kazuya's devilish nature and more furious at the Zaibatsu's perceived actions. The war no longer feels grounded in human conflict. It's undeniably something supernatural. Determined to uncover the truth, the journalist storms the Zaibatsu headquarters, threatening to expose everything he's learned about the Mishimas. Instead of being taken seriously, he's mocked and dismissed. Defeated, he leaves only to be approached by a mysterious black car. A figure inside invites him to meet with Heihachi Mishima himself. Skeptical yet intrigued, the journalist agrees and finds himself face to face with the infamous patriarch. Internally, he questioned Heihachi's motives. To his surprise, Heihachi praises his investigative skills and agrees to share the truth about the Mishima family's dark history, on the condition that the journalist vows to tell the world the real story. Heihachi recounts his tragic past, beginning with his love story with Kazumi and the birth of their son, Kazuya. He recalls how their idyllic life shattered when Kazumi's health mysteriously deteriorated. One day during a training session, Kazumi confronted him, revealing her true intentions. She had married him to destroy him and families like his. The two engaged in a brutal fight, a heartbreaking battle between love and betrayal. Heihachi ultimately emerged victorious, but at a devastating cost. Kazumi's death marked the end of their love and beginning of the Mishima family's descent into chaos.
Kazumi.
Now we make our way to the very last chapter of the story mode, titled The Purpose of Battle. The story reaches its climax as Heihachi finishes recounting the truth about Kazumi to the journalist. He confesses to ending Kazumi's life, justifying it as an act of survival. Kazumi had intended to delete him first. The journalist, still reeling from these revelations, presses further, questioning why Heihachi threw a 5-year-old Kazuya off a cliff. Heihachi admits that he suspected Kazuya carried the devil gene, inherited from Kazumi's bloodline. This act was a test. If Kazuya survived, it would prove Heihachi's suspicions correct. But the most shocking revelation comes next. Heihachi confesses to being responsible for the death of the journalist's family, a crime the journalist had wrongly attributed to Jin Kazama. Heihachi explains that his decision was based on the mistaken belief that Jin was behind the attack. It becomes clear that Heihachi has been quietly studying the journalist as intensely as the journalist has been investigating him. Before the journalist can process this betrayal, he is not unconscious and removed from Heihachi's presence. When he awakens, he finds himself in a wharf, greeted by Lars Alexanderson. Lars informs him of a message from the Zaibatsu and drives him to Violet Systems. As they travel, the journalist ponders Heihachi's reasons for cooperating and the weight of the truths he's uncovered. Meanwhile, at the ruined Mishima dojo, Heihachi utters his final philosophy.
最後にどちらが立っているか、それだけのこと。行くとするか。
The scene shifts to Violet Systems where the journalists, Lars, Lee Shalon, and Alyssa Bashanovich observe a satellite feed showing Heihachi and Kazuya preparing for their ultimate confrontation inside a fiery volcano. The battle is brutal as it is symbolic. Heihachi initially gains the upper hand, forcing Kazuya to unleash his devil powers to even the odds. Despite this, Heihachi lands a devastating blow, momentarily knocking Kazuya out of his devil form. The fight transitions to raw, bare-knuckle combat as father and son trade punches with unrelenting determination. In a climactic exchange, Kazuya lands the final fatal blow, ending Heihachi's life. In a grim echo of Tekken 2, Kazuya lifts his father's lifeless body and hurls it into the fiery depths of the volcano, his parting words mirror Heihachi's philosophy.
戦いとは最後にどちらが立っているかそれだけだ
The story closes with an epilogue where the journalist reflects the tragic cycle of violence that has consumed the Mishima family. As he finishes documenting the tale, he expresses a glimmer of hope, hoping one day there will be no war and one day there will be peace.
Truth be told, I'm lucky to still be alive. No normal person could understand the reality of everything I've seen. The truth of it all. Our world was dragged into a war between humans and devils. I'm just one person, but it is my job as a reporter to get the truth out, which is exactly why I'm writing this piece now. One day, the fighting will end. I just hope that when it does, the world will be at peace.
Now, if you didn't know, there's also a Tekken 7 post-credit scene. We get a glimpse of what's to come in the series' future. After the epic confrontation between Kazuya and Heihachi, where Kazuya ultimately defeated and deleted his father by throwing him into Volcano, the scene shifts to Jin Kazama. Meeting with his allies, Lee, Lars, and Lissa, Jin makes a powerful promise to end the ongoing war by defeating his father Kazuya. This sets the stage for the next chapter in the Mishima family saga and ends the narrative of Tekken 7.
やはり G 社は戦争を止める気はないようだな。
はい、各地で侵攻を開始しています。このままでは。
これが平八なき後の世界だ。そもそも世界にこの戦乱を引き起こしたのが貴様であるならば、これを収めるのもまた貴様の宿命。あとはお前しかいないんだ。
ああ、俺がやらねばな。デビルの力を持つ者として和也は俺が殺す。
Throughout the series, we've seen characters deeply affected by other actions. Think about King and Craig Marduk in Tekken 4. Marduk deletes Armor King, and boom, King is on a revenge mission. It's a classic setup and payoff scenario. Now, Tekken 7 flips the script. They bring in this unnamed journalist to narrate the story, and it's genius. Why? Because it shows how the Mishima War ripples out to touch the lives across the globe. We're seeing the chaos through the guy's eyes, feeling the impact as he loses his wife and child. It's not just about the fighters anymore, it's about the collateral damage. This approach gives us a fresh perspective on the conflict, making the story hit home in a way we haven't seen before in the series. While each game had a setup and punch in the following game, Tekken 6 to Tekken 7 takes the approach to a more relatable level, as players can sympathize with the journalist and understand his reason for wanting to eliminate Jin and understand why his home was just another casualty of war.
When I returned, nothing was as I remembered. The roads used to be quiet, hardly a car in sight. But now tanks and armored vehicles line the streets like an iron wall. Though it was noon, a thick fog of ash enveloped the sky in darkness. The blackened trees, the burning ground, the pungent, burnt air. The place I once called home was now just an ashen field, and streets echoed with the memories of playing children and delivery trucks. Everyone I loved had been lost to the past. That day, my old life ended, and a new one began. In my loneliness and despair, a hatred grew inside me.
Looking at the story from both a political and social level, Tekken 7 takes a fascinating turn that sets it apart from its predecessors. The game feels more politically charged than ever before, weaving a narrative that's deeply entrenched in global affairs and public perception. The Mishima Zaibatsu looks to use a serious marksman, while G-Corp has a court of public opinion on their side.
A society of exorcists who've historically held influence throughout Europe. What are you planning this time?
ジンが財閥を使ってめちゃくちゃしよったからな。世界を掌握するためには、和也を倒すだけでは意味がない。世界中の世論を味方につけねばならん。
Surely you can't be planning on using the Society's underground network?
G 社のトップがデビルであることが知れ渡れば、晴れて人間であるわしの正当性を主張できる。今回の大会はその格好の宣伝の場となるじゃろう。
When looking at the political angle, the Mishima conflict isn't just a family feud anymore. It's escalated into a full-blown international crisis. We got the G Corporation and the Mishima Zaibatsu essentially acting like superpowers, with their actions having far-reaching consequences across the world. It's like watching a high-stakes game of chess, but instead of pawns, we get fighters duking it out. The game doesn't shy away from touching on themes with corporate power, military might, and the blurred lines between personal vendettas and global warfare.
問題ない。最後に笑うのは俺だ。
何事じゃ。
衛星兵器が地球へ向け落下しています。
An unknown informant has claimed the Mishima Zaibatsu downed its own satellite. Look, there it is. It's really fallen.
どういうことじゃ。
We have to get out of here. Move! Move! The Mishima Zaibatsu satellite has crash landed. Scenes of chaos unfolding.
まさか、和也。イハチ、貴様は俺を超えられん。
But here's where things get really interesting. The story revolves around the court of public opinion. The unnamed journalist narrator isn't just a storytelling device. He represents the voice of the masses, the everyday people caught in the crossfire of this epic conflict. Through his eyes, we see how the actions of these larger-than-life characters impact regular folks. It's a clever way to ground the over-the-top action in reality and make the stakes feel more tangible. This focus on public perception adds a whole new layer to the Tekken narrative. It's not just about who wins the fights anymore, it's about who wins the PR war. We see characters like Kazuya and Heihachi not just battling with their fists, but also struggling to control their public image. It's like they're fighting on two fronts, in the arena and in the media. The game also touches on how information or misinformation can shape public opinion. The journalist's quest for truth mirrors our own real-world struggles with fake news and media manipulation. It's a surprisingly relevant theme for a fighting game, don't you think? In a way, Tekken 7's story is like a political thriller wrapped in a fighting game's package. It's got all the elements: power struggles, global conflicts, and the battle for hearts and minds. By framing the narrative through the lens of public opinion, the game manages to make its fantastical world feel more connected to our own.
Barked orders frantically, desperately trying to verify whether the images were a hoax or not. The demon on screen was unlike anything I'd imagined. No, it was something much more horrific. The devil incarnate.
The demon-like creature you see on your screens is apparently Kazuya Mishima, said to be controlling G Corporation from the shadows. World leaders are currently debating whether to believe.
The reports just in that the creature has been subdued by the Mishima Zaibatsu.
I'd long assumed this war was between humans. That my family, my hometown, had been razed to the ground by people.
The one theme this story returns to that has been seen in so many Tekken entries since its inception is revenge. At the heart of this vengeful tale is Kazuya Mishima, whose hatred for his father Heihachi burns as fiercely as ever. Despite the passage of time, Kazuya's malice towards Heihachi remains undiminished, fueled by the tragic events surrounding his mother, Kazumi. The revelation of Kazumi's fate adds a new layer to Kazuya's motivation, as he grapples with the knowledge that Heihachi not only attempted to eliminate him as a child, but also deleted his mother. This long-standing grudge culminates in a final explosive confrontation at a volcano. Here, Kazuya's pent-up rage and desire for retribution reached their zenith. Driven by the pain of his parents' betrayal and the anger at Heihachi's deception regarding Kazumi's actions, Kazuya finally overcomes his father. In a moment of poetic justice, he hurls his father into the fiery depths of the volcano, symbolically mirroring both the cliff incident from his childhood and the volcano incident from Tekken 2. The introduction of Akuma, a character traditionally associated with the Street Fighter series, adds an intriguing twist to the revenge narrative. Akuma's presence in the Tekken universe is directly tied to Kazumi Mishima, Heihachi's wife and Kazuya's mother. It's revealed that Kazumi once saved Akuma's life, and in return he promised to fulfill a deadly request.
死に場所を己で選んだか、三島和也。
貴様を葬る場所を選んだだけだ。殺す前に一つ聞いておく。貴様はなぜ母のことを知っている？八条家の名残か何かか？
かつて和美殿には命を助けられた。ただそれだけのこと。その借りを今返す。
では見せてもらおう。その力どれほどのものか。
Kazumi, foreseeing the destruction that Heihachi and Kazuya might bring upon the world, tasked Akuma with eliminating both her husband and son. This posthumous act of intervention demonstrates the far-reaching consequences of the Mishima family's toxic legacy. Akuma's mission, rooted in a debt of honor, brings him into direct conflict with both Heihachi and Kazuya.
我が名は豪輝。和美殿の願いに従い、うぬと三島和也に死をもたらす者。
平八さんを殺してください。そして和也のことも。
すべては和美殿の願い。
何？和美じゃと？和美が貴様にわしと和也を殺すよう依頼しておったじゃと？はっ、バカバカしい。その話が本当なら、なぜ今頃になって現れた？
Though Kazumi doesn't physically appear in the present-day events of Tekken 7, her influence looms large over the story. Her actions set in motion a chain of events that continue to shape the narrative. By enlisting Akuma to end the Mishima bloodline, Kazumi attempts to prevent the catastrophic consequences of the Devil Gene from her grave. This revelation adds a tragic dimension to the story, as it becomes clear that Kazumi's love for her family was overshadowed by her duty to protect the world from their potential for destruction. Her decision to have Akuma target both Heihachi and Kazuya underscores the cyclical nature of violence and revenge within the Mishima clan. The intricate web of revenge in Tekken 7 showcases how past actions continue to haunt the present, with each character's quest for vengeance leading to further conflict and tragedy. This complex narrative elevates the game beyond mere fighting, offering players a rich tapestry of motivations and consequences to explore. Now let's dive into the character roster of Tekken 7. When the game first dropped, it packed a punch with a mix of familiar faces and fresh blood, but that was just the beginning. The roster kept growing through DLC and seasonal releases, even bringing some unexpected guests from other franchises like Street Fighter, Final Fantasy, and The Walking Dead. Let's start with the Tekken veterans who were ready to rumble from day one. We had Alyssa Boshanovich, Asuka Kazama, Bob, Brian Fury, Devil Jin, Dragunov, Eddie Gordo, Fang Wei, Heihachi Mishima, Warong, Jin Kazama, Kazuya Mishima, King, Kuma, Lord Alexanderson, Lee Xiaolan / Violet his alter ego, Leo, Lily de Rochefort, Ling Xiaoyu, Martial Law, Miguel, Nina Williams, Panda, Paul Phoenix, Steve Fox, and Yoshimitsu. From seasonal passes, the veterans that returned were Anna Williams, Lei Wulong, Craig Marduk, Armor King, Julia Chang, Zafina, and Gan Ryu. Tekken 7 also introduced some new faces to the Iron Fist tournament. Claudio Serafino stepped into the ring as the world's strongest exorcist. Katrina Alves brought her Brazilian fighting spirit, having overcome a tough childhood. Lucky Chloe danced her way in as pop sensation in the face of G Corporation. Shaheen, the cool and collected bodyguard. Josie, who's a professional kickboxer. Gigas, a genetically enhanced human that works for G Corp. Master Raven, who is Raven's senior officer. The pre-order bonus character was Eliza, who is a vampire who woke up from a 600-year nap. From the seasonal passes, we get Kunimitsu II, who was the child of the original Kunimitsu. Leroy Smith, a man searching for Heihachi to confront him on the war he caused. Fakaram, a Muay Thai champion who fought underground to save his daughter and wife. Lastly, Lydia Soboyeska, who was a karate master and the Prime Minister of Poland. From the season passes, we get guest characters that would be added to the roster. These characters were Geese Howard from Fatal Fury, Noctis Lucius Calum from Final Fantasy, and Nagan Smith from The Walking Dead. Alright, let's break this down a bit. It's important to note that not every character in Tekken 7 gets their moment in the spotlight story-wise. Unless you're diving into the Tekken Wiki or scouring the official website, you might find yourself short on a backstory for some fighters. The game doesn't always spell it out for you. Also, it's worth mentioning that not every character gets a proper ending. Some were added purely as part of seasonal passes, giving players new faces to play with but not necessarily expanding the lore. It's a bit of a mixed bag in that sense. Now, while Kazuya and Heihachi's epic feud takes center stage in the main narrative, there are other characters whose stories do get some attention in the game. Let's take a look at those fighters who have their continuity covered, even if it's not as in-depth as our main father-son duo. These character stories help flesh out the Tekken universe beyond just the Mishima saga. If you're new to my Tekken series, I like to cover the newest characters before I tap into the veterans, so we're starting with Claudio Serafino. Claudio's part of the secret society called the Archers of Sirius. Think of them as a group of exorcists who've been pulling the strings in European history for centuries. Now, Claudio isn't just any member. He's the cream of the crop, the most powerful exorcist of his generation. So here's the deal. Claudio gets mixed up with the Mishima Zaibatsu, teaming up to take down some serious evil. We're talking about Kazuya Mishima and Jin Kazama, two guys with some serious supernatural baggage. But things get interesting when this younger girl shows up out of nowhere, demanding to see Jin. Now, Claudio's no dummy. He sees an opportunity and leads her to the roof for a showdown. In his ending, after he beats the girl who turns out to be Ling Xiaoyu, he's got this sinister plan to use her as bait. That's when things get really wild. He activates these powers and we see he's got a devil-like tattoo similar to Jin's. What's interesting is how Claudio's character develops. He starts off all cocky and flamboyant, but after Heihachi's betrayal, he hits a low point. It's actually Xiaoyu's unwavering faith in Jin that makes Claudio rethink his approach and use her as prey.
Come desideri. Puoi unirti a me. Credo che sarai un'ottima esca per la mia preda.
Now we move on to Katrina Alves. Her backstory is a roller coaster of emotions, starting with the loss of her parents at a young age and spending time in an orphanage. When adopted by a stranger, Katrina initially rebelled with colorful language, but his patience eventually won her over. This relationship became central to her character development, as he not only became a father figure, but also taught her the art of savate. Katrina's journey takes a dramatic turn when her adopted father mysteriously vanishes. Driven by the desire to find him and lacking financial means, she enters the King of Iron Fist tournament. This setup not only provides her motivation, but also showcases her determination and resourcefulness. Her first match on the roof of G Corporation's Munio Tower against the monstrous Geekus sets the stage for her intense journey throughout the tournament. Visually, Katrina is designed to embody a certain image of Latin American beauty, with long auburn hair, tanned skin, and a flashy style that includes her signature sunglasses. This design choice, while aiming to appeal to a broader audience, has also sparked discussions about representation in fighting games. Katrina's ending in Tekken 7 adds depth to her character. After defeating Geekus, she discovers a connection between them, hinting at a larger mystery involving her adopted father and G Corporation. This twist not only adds complexity to her personal story, but also ties her more closely to the overarching narrative of the Tekken universe. Now we move on to Master Raven. Her role in the game's narrative is closely tied to the ongoing conflict between the Mishima Zaibatsu and G Corporation. With Heihachi Mishima back at the helm of the Zaibatsu and waging war, her organization is ramped up its surveillance efforts. This puts her right in the thick of the action, tasked with monitoring and reporting the global chaos unfolding around her. Her character episode gives us a glimpse into her latest assignment, infiltrating the King of Iron Fist tournament. This isn't just any mission. She's there to confront a specific target. The scene of her facing off against her subordinate's enemy, Dragunov, in a frozen battleground sets the stage for an intense confrontation. Master Raven's ending sequence showcases her incredible skills and cool demeanor. After defeating Dragunov, she's almost dismissive of him, amused that he gave her subordinates such trouble. When Dragunov attempts to take her out with a tank missile, she effortlessly slices it in half with her sword. This display of power not only emphasizes her combat prowess, but also highlights the gap between her abilities and those of her subordinates. Her final words in the ending, calling her subordinate an imbecile who needs retraining, give us insight into her character. She's clearly a perfectionist who expects the best from those under her command. This no-nonsense attitude, combined with her loyalty to her duty, paints a picture of a formidable, dedicated agent.
This is the guy that gave Raven all that trouble? That imbecile needs to be retrained.
Now let's talk about Lucky Chloe, one of the most dubious and dividing additions to the roster of the game. This fresh new character addition brings a highly unique and polarizing personality to the franchise. She's a pop sensation in the face of G Corporation, which starkly contrasts with the typical serious, combat-focused characters in the Tekken universe. She came into the series to very mixed reactions among the Tekken community. Some players welcomed the addition of a lighter-hearted character into the roster, while others felt that her design and personality did not fit the Tekken universe. The controversy went so far as to engender early rumors that she would be excluded from various regional releases of the game, though this was later explained away as a misunderstanding. Let's go over Chloe's background, which rooted in her childhood fascination with Japanese idol culture upon attending an expo. This experience laid the foundation for her goal of becoming the world's best idol, and her stage name, Lucky Chloe, and signature style were born. She gained overnight success as her dance moves went viral on the internet video websites, which propelled her into international stardom. Chloe's alignment with the G Corporation in the storyline of Tekken adds a fresh dynamic to the series. Despite the apparent conflict between G Corp and the Mishima Zaibatsu, she has kept her personality upbeat in public and can be considered the friendly face of the company in their advertisements. This contrast with the bubbly exterior to the dark undertones of what G Corp does comes across as a good depth in her character. Chloe's introduction to the tournament in her character episode showcases how confident and playful she is. She doesn't back down against a strong opponent, Eddie Gordo, going so far as to even make a weird bet that he'll be her backup dancer if he loses. Really shows how brazen she is and how she approaches even the most serious situations with a light-hearted attitude. Her ending really drove it home that she is very demanding and a little sadistic. She shows no mercy as she teaches Eddie her signature moves, repeatedly kicking him for mistakes and insisting he fulfill their bargain. The final twist where she declares Eddie will have to dress as a girl for their live performance underscores her mischievous and potentially manipulative nature. This ending was to serve as a more comedic and lighthearted ending.
おっさん何グダグダやってんだよ。私のバックダンサーにしてやるんだからこれくらいちゃんとやれよ。なんだよ文句あんのかてめえ。負けた分際で私の言うことが聞けねえのかよ。ほらもう一回。ラッキーくらいだよ。おらこっちも好きでやってんじゃねえんだよ。てめえアイドルなめてんだろ。プロの世界は甘くねえんだよこのうどん頭野郎。ほらもう一回。ラッキーくらいだよ。ダメだって言ってんだろ。手がこう腰もこう。あ、そうだ本番では助走させっからな。
Now let's get into Shaheen. Military training is his background. Currently working for a private military company, dealing in the protection of dignitaries. His skill in the army made him unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat, making him right away a force to contend with. Shaheen has been brought into the whole Tekken storyline because his friend, the head of the oil corporation, met a mysterious death. While officially ruled an accident, the succeeding events raised Shaheen's suspicions. The forced sale of his friend's company to G Corporation and the forced resignation of family members from their managerial roles prompt Shaheen to take a more personal investigation en route. The deeper Shaheen delves, the more he discovers a sinister truth. A relative of his dead friend informs him that Kazuya Mishima, referred to as a demonic man, is behind G Corporation. Even though he's been skeptical about the existence of real demons, this investigation has led Shaheen to believe that Kazuya might be even worse than any hellish creation. This creates a moral dilemma for Shaheen. He is caught between his desire for revenge against Kazuya for his friend's death and the uncertainty regarding how to face such strong opponents, potentially supernatural opponents. Yet, this sense of justice made Shaheen opt for a lone crusade, infiltrating G Corporation. Additionally, Shaheen's ending in Tekken 7 gave much more significant meaning to his development as a character. Immediately after beating Kazuya, Shaheen at first wanted to make amends rather than take revenge. However, Kazuya refused the offer of Shaheen and changed into the devilish form to break out, which turned Shaheen's perception dramatically. Witnessing Kazuya's true diabolical nature firsthand, Shaheen resolves to apprehend him upon the next encounter, solidifying his commitment to justice and vengeance.
أصبح الانتقام أمرا شائعا والرحمة شيئا استثنائيا، ومع ذلك سأختار طريق الرحمة بالقيام بذلك. سيتم الإعفاء عني أيضا لعدم قيامي بإنقاذ صديقي. كازويا، ما رأيك في العمل معي؟ ماذا؟ واو. تبا، إنه الشرير الأكبر. إذا كان الأمر كذلك فيجب أن لا أدعه يهرب في المرة القادمة التي أقابله فيها. لأجل أصدقائي، لأجل العالم أجمع، علي إيقافه.
Now we're looking at Josie Rizzo. Born to parents passionate about martial arts, Josie was initially a crybaby who was pushed into training to build her confidence. Despite her reluctance, she eventually became a skilled kickboxer, balancing her career between professional fighting and modeling to support her family. This background highlights her determination and sense of familiar responsibility. The turning point of Josie's story would have to be the disastrous typhoon in the Philippines. She was inspired by their humanitarian effort from the Tekken Force during the disaster, and hence decides to join their ranks. This can be demonstrated through her wish to help others and help in a group for the greater good. Her ending sequence with Kuma is particularly memorable, bringing her emotional nature after defeating the bear. She learns he was only trying to return her lost earring, leading to a moment of unexpected compassion and vulnerability.
You scared me! You came after me so you could give me this? No. Are you okay? Stay with me!
Now, let's cover Eliza. Eliza is an ancient vampire born over 1,000 years ago. Her most defining characteristic is definitely her narcolepsy, which plays a big role both in her story and gameplay. Because of it, once she falls asleep intending to rest for just a few hours, she slept for 600 years. Waking up in the modern era, Eliza found that her vampiric powers had significantly weakened. She sought out victims with intense spiritual force, believing their blood would help her regain her former strength in her quest to do so. It is for this search that she has come to the headquarters of a clan of exorcists whom she crossed swords with in the past. Eliza's ending in Tekken 7 is quite the twist in her story. Immediately after defeating Claudio, she's confronted by Lily, who claims to be Eliza's younger sister, and says Eliza has been imprisoned under the de Rochefort family estate for centuries. Thus, this would establish some sort of connection between Eliza and the Rochefort family, although not quite clear in what degree. The ending also plays Eliza's narcolepsy for laughs, as she repeatedly falls asleep trying to explain why Lily's claim is impossible. Lily suggesting that Eliza should try less blood and more coffee is a moderately light take on the vampire's ancient problem.
You call yourself an exorcist? I'm beat. I'm gonna get home and rest.
Je t'ai enfin trouvé. Tu étais emprisonnée sous la propriété de Rochefort. Je suis ta sœur.
Caesar? Yeah, right. I was born 1,000 years and 4 months ago. You're about a millennium too young to be...
Hey!
Like I was saying, I slept a few centuries beneath your estate and...
Réveille-toi! Ne t'avise pas de t'endormir en ma présence.
You just don't shut up, do you? As I was saying, the de Rochefort family and I...
Tu devrais boire moins de sang et plus de café.
Now I want to cover the main guest character because I didn't cover his ending in the story and felt it was more appropriate to give him his own section. Akuma's inclusion in the story was an interesting crossover, since such has existed between Street Fighter and Tekken franchises. Even though Akuma may be from Street Fighter, his inclusion in Tekken 7 is nowhere near being just a guest character, but part of its in-game canon storyline. Akuma was specifically chosen by Tekken producer Kishiro Harada, who thought the character would fit well into the Tekken universe. This is probably because of the earlier crossover game Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which had already established a connection between the two franchises. Akuma's backstory in Tekken 7 is entwined with Heihachi's wife, Kazumi Mishima. According to the game, Akuma was once saved by Kazumi, which he promised to return one day by deleting Heihachi and her son Kazuya if something bad had happened to her. This debt is Akuma's motivation for entering the world of Tekken. Akuma's presence in the in-game story is highly notable since he shows up at Mishima Dojo to confront Heihachi, explaining how he's related to Kazumi and that his aim is to eliminate both him and Kazuya. He fights with both Mishimas throughout the game, where he proves to be quite powerful, even forcing Kazuya into using his devil form. It was actually a pretty bold move on the part of Namco to include Akuma within Tekken 7's main storyline, considering the lines that would blur between the two fighting game universes. It's important to note that though Akuma retains his moves and abilities from Street Fighter, his entire character model in Tekken 7 was built from scratch by the Namco team. In that context, Akuma in Tekken 7 gives the Mishima family feud a new dimension and conflict. He is both antagonist and wildcard. The most intensive battles in the game happen between him, Heihachi, and Kazuya, culminating in their last battle against Devil Kazuya, which took place in a volcanic pit. Making Akuma canon in the Tekken storyline was a contentious move for some fans. This showcased that the developers would be able to take risks and even shake up established lore within Tekken while showing love for the Street Fighter series. The last new character I'm going to uncover who was also unplayable is Kazumi Mishima. Her story adds depth to the Mishima family saga and provides crucial context for the ongoing conflict. Kazumi was born into the Hachijo clan, a family of assassins, and was sent to Jinpachi Mishima's dojo as a young girl. There, she trained alongside Heihachi, initially as rivals before falling in love. They married and had a son, Kazuya, whom Kazumi adored. However, Kazumi's role was more complex than it initially appeared. The Hachijo clan, knowing full well Heihachi's penchant for cruelty, had sent Kazumi to infiltrate the Mishima family in the hope that through her love, Heihachi's lust for power would be tempered. And for a time, it indeed was. This is where Kazumi's tale gets dark, as she begins experiencing episodes of illness and violence. During these episodes, she would try to attack Heihachi, who for the most part thought she had some sort of split personality disorder. In truth, however, the reality was much darker. Kazumi had the devil gene, a demonic mutation that would eventually be passed to Kazuya. The climax of Kazumi's story occurs when she confronts Heihachi in the Mishima dojo. She reveals her true purpose to delete Heihachi to prevent him from becoming a threat to the world. The fight escalates into a violent confrontation where Kazumi assumes her devil form. Based on the Kyojo of Japanese folklore, a female ogre symbolizing the revenge of a wronged woman. The Kyojo, according to Japanese folklore, was a woman wronged by her husband who turned to the gods for strength to seek revenge, thus was transformed into a Kyojo. A female Onai thus also represents a woman repressed or unconscious emotions and her marginalization and resentment of her treatment by her husband. Despite her power, Kazumi is ultimately defeated by Heihachi. In a moment of desperation, she warns him about the chain of hatred his actions will unleash and pleads for her life. However, Heihachi instantly deletes her upon recognizing the fact that the woman in front of him is not Kazumi, whom he used to love. Kazumi's death sends a really big ripple effect. This brings about Heihachi at war with his father, Jinpachi, and his act of throwing the young Kazuya from the cliff. Moreover, Kazumi's demise led Kazuya's revenge pursuit towards his father. She had asked Akuma before her death to eliminate both Heihachi and Kazuya in case she failed in her mission. The connection behind Akuma's presence in the Tekken storyline now begins to make a little more sense, further enriching this complex web of revenge and Call of Duty that characterizes the series.
Kazumi?
貴様はいずれ世界を脅かす存在になる。
何の夢を見ている？
故に今死を与えるのだ。
カズミ、ダメ！
まだわからぬか。なぜ我がこの家に嫁いだのか。
まさか。
我ら八丈家は貴様のような人間を消すために太古から存在しておる。その使命を今果たす。
Now that we cover all the newest characters added in this entry, let's cover the veterans, starting with Feng Wei. His in-game story follows his relentless pursuit of ultimate strength and mastery of martial arts, a discipline of the God Fist Chinese Kempo style. Feng's journey is driven by his interpretation of the ancient scrolls he had stolen from the Mishima Zaibatsu. These scrolls contain within them the secret to becoming the Dragon God, a perfect warrior who transcends all other fighting styles. In Tekken 7, Feng revisits the setting of his childhood training in an attempt to amp up the regimen, but then comes along a mysterious opponent with real strength, challenging him to a fight. What that does is put into contrast how much closer Feng has come towards his objectives, and it serves to illustrate just how intense Feng is over what happens, so long as such obstacles further strengthen him. Feng's character in Tekken 7 picks up where his other appearances have left off, and really amplifies the single-minded nature of his goal to be the strongest living fighter. It's from this that he has interpreted defeat all other masters and conquer their styles, henceforth searching for and defeating powerful foes, each triumph bringing him closer to transcendence. The ending sequence of Tekken 7 further illustrates Feng's relentless nature and growing power. After having defeated Martial Law, he faces a renewed challenge from his opponent. Even though Law was able to land a strong strike, Feng countered with a much stronger one, leaving Law out cold. This scene shows not only Feng's immense strength, but also his unyielding determination to prove his superiority in combat. Now we get to the dragon himself, Martial Law. His story perpetuates his struggle with financial problems while trying to keep his legacy as a martial arts master. From being called the legendary dragon, Law is now facing debt problems and struggling to keep his dojo running. In Tekken 7, Law's main motivation is paying off his son's debts, which have placed him in a very undesirable financial situation. Focusing his attention on paying off this debt, he lets his dojo fall into disarray, causing the number of students coming to train to greatly decline. It's here, after realizing the bleak future of his business, that Law seeks out a skilled enough fighter to manage the dojo in his absence. Law's storyline begins with him asking Paul for assistance in finding a suitable candidate to manage his dojo. However, Law makes the wise decision to decline Paul's offer to run the dojo himself, realizing it will only continue financial ruin. In desperation, Law seeks a strong fighter to take over the dojo and starts searching everywhere. His search sends him to hear of a martial artist in rural China who is the next alleged God Fist Master. Seeing this probably as a way out of the mess he's in, Law sets off to travel back to his ancestral homeland. In Tekken 7, the ending of Law showed that he still operates with Paul, joining hands and taking on the fierce Fang Wei. However, they overpower him, only to find Fang release his actual and much stronger form and find themselves fleeing. This ending highlights Law's resilience and his ability to rely on friendships in times of need, while also emphasizing the overwhelming strength of some opponents.
Live!
Now let's cover Bob Richards. Bob Richards was once known as a pretty skilled martial artist. He remade his body into the fighter known as Bob in Tekken 7. After many years of weight gain and power training, he entered the King of Iron Fist tournament to be recognized as the strongest man in the world. In Tekken 7, Bob's way to the tournament is suddenly intercepted by an explosion in his path. Confronted by a mysterious man exuding an evil aura, likely Brian Fury, his sense of justice is called upon. Despite the urgency of reaching his match, Bob chooses to confront this new threat, showcasing his heroic nature and willingness to help others in need. The end of Tekken 7 for Bob perfectly encapsulates his personality and fighting style. In the win pose after defeating Brian, he does an aerobic move shouting speed and weight. This basically means how nimble Bob is for a person with mass, which in turn again defines his fighting style. However, the comedic effect on the floor collapsing under their combined weights, preventing Bob from getting to the tournament, tacks on that ironic, humorous touch to the story. This ending serves several functions. It demonstrates Bob's astonishing physical abilities. It reinforces his character trait of putting others' needs before his goals. It adds humor that fits with Bob's generally cheerful and sometimes comical character.
Bob never made it to the tournament.
Now we make our way to the human cyborg, Brian Fury. As a continuing story in Tekken 7, Brian remains in a state of turmoil and violence. From his international police officer days to his current form as an aggressive combatant, the man harbors a plethora of confusing deaths and resurrections. His official profile focuses on a kickboxing style of fighting and emphasizes his exclusive status as a replicant, created by both Dr. Abel and Dr. Bogdanovich. A perpetual generator in his body is the signature of his character, providing the background for his practicality and endless potential for violence and destruction. In Tekken 7, Brian's prologue is all about his affection for conflict and chaos. He seeks out fights and actually enjoys the destruction caused by the global conflict at large. This can be shown how he goes into the war-torn city to go on an indiscriminate rampage, caring little for collateral damage or innocent lives. Brian's encounter with Bob, described as a round-town sluggish-looking man, demonstrates his eagerness for combat. Despite Bob's appearance, Brian sees him as a potential victim, highlighting his ruthless nature and constant desire for battle. In fact, Brian's ending sequence in Tekken 7 seals the deal for his personality, that he is destructive. At the end of the game and after defeating Bob, a fighter aircraft catches Brian's attention. He picks up an iron bar and throws it at the aircraft without hesitation. The aircraft explodes, and his reaction? Just walking away. Laughing pretty much captured the gist of a sociopathic individual who enjoys random acts of destruction. Now to the Taekwondo master, Hwoarang. His storyline in Tekken 7 continues to revolve around his rivalry with Jin Kazama and how he relentlessly pursues a way to prove himself as a better fighter. Hwoarang is a talented Taekwondo practitioner trained by Baekdu San, and he has always regarded Jin as his ultimate rival. This rivalry increases when Jin, as the head of the Mishima Zaibatsu, declares war on the world and then mysteriously disappears. Hwoarang, believing that Jin wouldn't go down easily, sets out to find him. With as little information as possible, he heads to the Middle East in search of Jin. After tracing a few useless rumors, he hears that a demon has shown up in town. He instantly dashes to the place on his motorcycle, driven by strong determination to confront Jin. He finds the town deserted except for Jin in his devil form, and the confrontation between them is what Hwoarang's ending depicts. Immediately after defeating Devil Jin, Hwoarang expresses frustration in beating a monster like Jin. It just goes to show that his rivalry with Jin is indeed very complex and confusing to him. Considering the current state of Jin, the ending gets dramatic when United Nations soldiers start attacking them, throwing a grenade. Hwoarang saves Jin from the blast, quick moves showing unexpected loyalty and sacrificing his safety to do so. This leaves him injured, especially his right eye, as he gets up and sees Jin running away with soldiers after him, but is too seriously injured to follow. From this ending scene, there are several aspects of the character of Hwoarang that can be understood. His relentless resolve to confront Jin whatever the circumstance, the many facets his emotions regarding Jin comprise of, whether rivalry, frustration, or maybe a deeper connection. His instinctive heroism that led him to want to protect Jin despite the rivalry. In the Tekken series, Hwoarang has been depicted as hot-headed but skilled and full of honor. His story in Tekken 7 deepens his character from a street fighter looking for revenge to almost complicated person facing up to the aftermath of his rivalry and the changes around him.
괴물 상태인 너한테 이겨봤자 의미 없다고!
Don't let them get away!
Now let's talk about Devil Jin. Devil Jin's story in Tekken 7 furthers the struggle between Jin Kazama and his demonic alter ego. After defeating Azazel, Jin is captured by UN troops but transforms into Devil Jin during transport. He then escapes and wanders the desert, evading recapture attempts. Devil Jin's arrival in a Middle Eastern town causes panic among civilians, setting the stage for confrontation. During story mode, Jin is airlifted when the change takes hold. The chopper gets destroyed by Devil Jin, and later, using his powers, UN soldiers are eliminated. That pretty much defines how uncontrollable and destructive the Devil Jin can be. Later on, Jin is saved by Lars Alexanderson, who brings him to Violet Systems. After sleeping since Heihachi's death, Jin joined Lars and Lee to stop the ongoing conflict. He knew that he's the only one responsible for putting things right, and he declares he would eliminate Kazuya just because he has devil blood. During this moment, it's apparent how hard Jin was battling his demons, fully recognizing he's the only way this could all end in a minimum of bloodshed. An important encounter is made between Devil Jin and Hwoarang. Hwoarang defeats Devil Jin only to save him from a grenade blast by taking a hit himself. The interaction shows the complexity of Jin's relationship with his rival and also shows a sense of honor within Hwoarang. This is furthered in Devil Jin's ending, which shows his power and how much of a danger he is. After fighting Hwoarang again, Yuan's soldiers interrupt their battle. The reaction of Devil Jin to attack soldiers with a beam attack shows a complete lack of restraint and the threat he is to those around him. Devil Jin appears throughout Tekken 7 as a manifestation of inner struggle and the destructive potentials of the Devil Gene. His storyline develops around traces of internal conflict, burden of power, and fight for control of his own destiny.
바보야, 도망쳐! 으악!
Now let's talk about Lily. In Tekken 7, Lily's story has been continuously about her wealthy background and her love of fighting, especially the rivalry between her and Asuka Kazama. Lily is the daughter of a wealthy oil baron from Monaco. She developed an interest in fighting after, as a young girl, she was kidnapped for ransom. It was while overcoming one of her captors that she found the exhilaration of combat. This experience would shape her future, as she would later travel the world and search for fights and opponents via her family's private jet. In Tekken 7, Lily enters the King of Iron Fist tournament without telling her father. She appears to do so solely for the thrill of a good fight, especially when it involves her self-declared rival, Asuka Kazama. Lily is rather carefree with regard to the tournament, and very confident, gracing the area with a dramatic entrance that does not reveal even a shred of regard for the apparent annoyance of Asuka. Lily's ending in Tekken 7 shows her playful side, but also somewhat sadistic. After defeating Asuka, Lily slaps her, which sends her flying. When asked about this, she says it was all in fun and that Asuka deserved it simply for being herself. This exchange between the two women speaks volumes about the complex dynamic between them, rival, and a hint of Lily's superiority complex. In a series of years in Tekken, Lily represented elegance and deadliness, aerobics, and dance-like moves combined in her fighting style, self-taught. Her character, which is so different from the majority, gives an aristocratic and elegant tint to the brutal martial arts tournaments. Meanwhile, the ongoing rivalry between Lily and Asuka still remains a big part of her character development, adding both comic relief and an interesting dynamic between two very different personalities within the Tekken universe.
悔しいけど認めたる。うちの負けや。何するんや。
Oh, je ne sais pas. Juste comme ça. C'était rigolo. Et tu le méritais pour avoir été tellement... toi.
説明になってへんわ。うちにも一発殴らせろ。
Now let's talk about Asuka Kazama. In Tekken 7, the story of Asuka furthers her rivalry with Lily de Rochefort, which has been ignited since the previous games. In fact, it has been taken to the extent where Lily decides to get Asuka registered for the King of Iron Fist tournament. Asuka, irritated by Lily's presumptuous attitude, decides to take part in the tournament to sort out their issues once and for all. Asuka's prologue explains her frustration due to Lily's antics. It's actually a phone call from Lily informing Asuka of her registration for the tournament that gets her into it. Despite all the irritation, Asuka does wish that defeating Lily will finally put an end to their rivalry. By the end of Tekken 7, Asuka's storyline takes a sudden twist. After defeating Lily, Asuka finds out that her rival has bought her family's dojo and is planning to live with them. She wants to learn Kazama-style traditional martial arts and help rebuild the dojo. Asuka looks shocked at this. Then she chases after Lily, demanding an explanation. Such an ending would not only accentuate the complex dynamic the series has built up for Asuka and Lily, but also tease potential plot developments for Asuka herself. In all actuality, she realizes what happened to Fang Wei, her relation to Jin Kazama, and such makes that rivalry a potential massive storyline in later games. As the series has established, Asuka is quite strong-headed and justice-minded, to the point she would interfere in other people's conflicts of interest, all for the sake of peace. The continuous rivalry with Lily lightens up her storyline with more comedic overtones as compared to the more serious story of the Mishima conflict that fills up the core plot of the Tekken series.
Allô? Sébastien? Oui, comme prévu. Ciao!
なんやいきなり電話して。
Tu sais, aujourd'hui je vais emménager chez toi.
は？何を言うとんねん。
Et je vais apprendre les arts martiaux classiques de style Kazama.
は？
Détends-toi! Tout est réglé. Je viens d'acheter ta maison et ton dojo. Je sais tout de toi, Asuka. Ton père a été battu par Fenway, le tas de muscles qui pratique le Kenpo, et il a perdu ses élèves et son argent. Ta famille n'avait pas les moyens de réparer ton vélo, et encore moins le dojo. J'ai aussi étudié ton arbre généalogique. C'était très intéressant. On dirait que tu pourrais facilement être entraîné dans les histoires des Mishima. Oh, j'ai oublié de te dire. J'ai fait nettoyer ton dojo, et je l'ai fait décorer avec des pétales de fleurs. Ton père était enchanté. Nous devrions rentrer à la maison. Tout de suite.
Ah! ちょい待てや！話が見えん！話が！
Allez! Dépêche-toi! Personne n'aime les traînards.
せやから話を聞け！
Ling Xiaoyu, a Tekken favorite. In Tekken 7, she continues her story going around seeking Jin Kazama and any connection to the Mishima family conflict. This time, Xiaoyu plays an even more proactive role in trying to get to the bottom of what happened with Jin's disappearance. She sneaked into the building of the Mishima Zaibatsu, showing a growing transformation from a joyful teenager to a determined young lady who risks for others. She overhears Heihachi talking about plans to find Jin while in an enemy camp. This again reassures her of her role in a view of the Mishima family power struggle and being Jin's centerpiece. Before she could get even more information, a mysterious white-clad man by the name of Claudio Serafino confronted her. Xiaoyu confronts Claudio on a rooftop, with her confidence and fighting spirit shining through. As the protagonist, her assertion, "If you think I'm just some little girl, you're sadly mistaken," really punctuates the focus of her character and determination to be recognized seriously. At the end of her scenario, after having defeated Claudio, he accepts her into his search for Jin. This turn of events, unexpected for the character, seems to provide hope in Xiaoyu's quest. However, the sinister smile of Claudio at the end may mean his motives are not quite in tune with Xiaoyu's, adding an element of suspense and possible danger in her journey. Throughout the series, Xiaoyu has developed from a cheerful, somewhat naive character to a more complex person, deeply involved in the main storyline. Loyal to Jin, she also bears determination to unlock the mystery behind the Mishima conflict, which makes her quite important in the development of the ongoing story.
わかった？
D'accordo. Ti permetto di venire con me.
やった！
Ma dovrai essere pronta.
うん、わかってる。でも、もう迷わないって決めたから。
Bene. Era quello che volevo sentirti dire.
Macho Man himself, Paul Phoenix. In Tekken 7, Paul's story is all about participating in the King of Iron Fist tournament. His prologue makes a great deal of his popularity among martial arts fans, even going as far as calling him the golden boy of the martial arts world. This enthusiasm is dampened when he learns his opponent is once again Kuma, his long-standing Urasign rival. Paul's story had a twist because Kuma opted out of the tournament and his opponent was switched around until the last minute. But this development had relieved Paul on the surface level because now he expects to fight a human. But what happens in this ending gives the final point to another running gag, where Paul was constantly being matched up with bears. The ending of Paul in Tekken 7 has an ironic tint to his character arc in a more comic note. After defeating Panda, Paul celebrates his victory, only to find the audience favors Panda over him. This ending sequence speaks to a number of aspects of Paul's character: his continued need to prove himself against non-human adversaries, the incongruence between his self-concept and public perception, the series' tendency to use Paul as comic relief despite his serious ambitions. Throughout the series, Paul has gone from a serious contender to more of a comic relief character, especially in his interactions with bear characters. This change in role for him within the story also reflects how the series balances serious martial arts drama with more light-hearted moments.
Gotcha! Yeah! Get lost, loser!
You stink!
We love Panda, not you!
No!
The attention now goes to Panda. At Tekken 7, she's worried because of Xiao Yu's disappearance and has to sign up for the King of Iron Fist tournament. Later, it puts her in an arena where she may find her companion. However, she will be met not by the dear friend, but Paul Phoenix, a boorish man with a bizarre hairstyle. Panda's Tekken 7 ending represents just how much she loves the limelight. In another sense, her loyalty and love for Xiao Yu. After defeating Paul in the game, celebration scenes of Panda are promptly shortened as one of her many bracelets falls off her. This triggers a flashback scene of Xiao Yu, or more importantly, to her scent. At this, overcome with the urge to be reunited with Xiao Yu, Panda races off, running over the defeated Paul in the process. The following can be learned from this narrative about the character of Panda: her unquestionable loyalty to Xiao Yu, her strong fighting skills, which enable her to overpower human opponents, her intelligence and persistence in searching for a friend. Panda's storyline furthers evidence in Tekken 7 that she is not only a more than regular pet, but she's a trained fighter and protector. That brings in quite a bit of depth to her character. This means even in non-human characters, there's an emotional appeal for the storyline. We now turn our attention to the Capoeira master, Eddie. In Tekken 7, Eddie infiltrates G Corporation to confront Kazuya directly, the base of operations for Kazuya. His fighting skills are clear as he sends a multitude of guards to the ground with his Capoeira skills. However, his way to Kazuya is suddenly barred by Lucky Chloe, a young pop star affiliated with G Corporation. Lucky Chloe is a complete opposite of the serious, revenge-driven Eddie in appearance and demeanor. Her youthful and exuberance and playful taunting at Eddie as an old man confuse and irritate him. This interaction shows a generational gap between characters in the Tekken universe and adds a dash of humor to Eddie's otherwise grim mission. Eddie's ending in Tekken 7 also focuses again on his single-mindedness for revenge. After beating Lucky Chloe, he demands to know where Kazuya is. Chloe's response, a childlike drawing, infuriates Eddie and leaves him no closer to his goal. This ending serves to show the obstacles in Eddie's path and the contrast between his serious demeanor and the more lighthearted elements of the Tekken world. Eddie's character has been carved through the series for his desire for vengeance and mastery of capoeira. His story in Tekken 7 reinforces those aspects, but also points out the challenges he has achieving his goals from formidable opponents and unexpected distractions.
Me diz onde está o Kazuya. Tá brincando comigo?
Pega, pega, pi.
Droga!
Our attention is now swayed to the wrestler King. King's character development in Tekken 7 evidences growth and maturity. Despite the violent history between Marduk and Armor King II, King tries to make amends between the two. He stops Marduk from finishing off Armor King, reminding him of the redemption that King offered Marduk in the past. It's a show of how King can forgive and not continue the chain of violence. King proposed a retirement match between Marduk and Armor King II, in which the loser would have to retire from fighting. This is one of the diplomatic solutions where King's wisdom in trying to solve a long-time feud in a peaceful manner can be seen. King's ending in Tekken 7 has shown his adaptability to the situation and how friends can influence one's fighting style. Faced with Jack 7, who had analyzed all of King's moves, King innovated and integrated techniques from both Marduk and Armor King to his repertoire. This was enough to not only beat Jack 7, but also symbolize a unity as he tries to attain among friends. Over the series, King developed from an avenging character into a peacemaker. Throughout, he always was helping others, but never once gave up on his morals. His storyline in Tekken 7 further helps solidify the role that King has made for himself in the mostly violent King of Iron Fist tournament as a compassionate character. So let's see how it goes with the machine himself, Jack 7. Actually, in Tekken 7, Jack 7's story is one of internal competition within G Corporation and building up the ultimate humanoid weapon. The Jack series, its head, Jane, takes place of an opponent against Gigas, a bio-enhanced superhuman developed by a rival team. Such internal rivalry reflects the wider thematic thread of technological growth and competition going on through Tekken games. In order to end the argument over which one is the better weapon, both Jack 7 and Gigas enter the King of Iron Fist tournament. This not only allows for a reason behind Jack 7's inclusion in the tournament, but also gives further backstory to G Corporation's inner workings. Tekken 7 actually has a pretty funny ending for Jack 7. Appointed by Kazuya Mishima as the chief humanoid weapon of G Corporation, Jack 7 receives a small allowance of $25 a month. The joy is short-lived as in an encounter with Lucky Chloe, he falls off Millennium Tower while trying to catch his appointment letter. This ending serves many purposes. It confirms that Jack 7 is superior to Gigas in the eyes of G Corporation. It gives the usually serious character of Jack a bit of a comedic touch. It shows Jack 7's dedication to his mission even in trifling matters such as preserving an official document. Throughout the Tekken series, Jack models have represented the bleeding edge of military technology. Jack 7's story in Tekken 7 continues this tradition while exploring corporate competition and the sometimes absurd results of advanced AI in humanoid form.
なとこに突っ立ってんじゃねえよポンコツ。知らないった。
Now, let's talk about Leo. In Tekken 7, Leo enters the King of Iron Fist tournament in search of information about their mother, who had been researching on behalf of the Mishima Zaibatsu and is now deceased. Feeling that luck is finally on their side, Leo discovers that their battle arena is a dojo owned by Zaibatsu. However, when Leo arrives there, they find the dojo in ruins, creating an eerie atmosphere under the moonlight. Suddenly, this scene took an entirely new dimension when a weird silhouette floated in. This opponent later came to be known as Yoshimitsu, with a highly rotated sword at high speed and an appearance like that of a flying squid or octopus. In Tekken 7, Leo's ending shows how inquisitive and analytical he is. Winning in the bout against Yoshimitsu, Leo approaches his opponent, touching one of Yoshimitsu's tentacles and moving away in surprise as it wriggles. This again proves the inquisitive character Leo has, even regarding everything bizarre and unknown. Leo's story in Tekken 7 contains the determination he has to find more about his parents, mainly the involvement of his mother with G Corporation and Mishima Zaibatsu. The investigation into this fact has driven Leo's actions and created personal stakes for him in the greater conflicts of the Tekken universe.
Ein Tintenfisch? Ein Oktopus? Ein Ninja? Das ist also dieser komische Typ, über den alle reden. Japan ist so verrückt. Nein, ich muss mich auf meine Mission konzentrieren. Bis später, komischer Oktopus-Typ.
Time for the Space Ninja, Yoshimitsu. In Tekken 7, Yoshimitsu enters the King of Iron Fist tournament in an attempt to investigate his suspicions regarding Heihachi Mishima's reinstatement as CEO of the Mishima Zaibatsu. The Mishima Dojo will be an ideal place for him to infiltrate and get much information. The dojo looks like it has just been passed through a typhoon when Yoshimitsu enters. That is where he meets Leo, an enchanting yet dangerous looking martial artist. That was a prelude to their fight. Yoshimitsu's ending in Tekken 7 takes a humorous turn right after his victory over Leo. Worried that Leo is not breathing, Yoshimitsu attempts to conduct CPR. Leo, coming back to their senses and seeing Yoshimitsu's mask, is panicked and tries to get away. Yoshimitsu tries to soothe Leo only to get kicked in the groin, leaving the ninja withering in pain as Leo runs away. This ending brings to the fore several aspects of Yoshimitsu's character: his concern for others, including his opponents, the intimidating effect his appearance can have on others, the comical results of well-intentional actions. Throughout the Tekken series, Yoshimitsu has been a character of many facets, juggling his role as a thief with strong moral code. His story in Tekken 7 is no exception, which mixes his serious mission with moments of unintended hilarity.
Hilfe! Ein komischer Oktopus-Typ ist hinter mir her!
Let's talk about the brown bear himself, Kuma. Kuma's story in Tekken 7 is still all about his loyalty to Heihachi Mishima and his role within the Mishima Zaibatsu. After Heihachi's presumed death, Kuma tries to save the Zaibatsu until he is retreated to wilderness to train. Upon the return of Heihachi, Kuma was promoted to Tekken Force as a reward for his loyalty. As a member of the Tekken Force, Kuma had been dispatched to the Philippines for disaster relief following a devastating typhoon. The reality, however, was that this was merely an excuse for a recruiting drive for the Tekken Force, in which Kuma was to serve as the final test for applicants in order to show both his strength and his worth in the organization. Meanwhile, Kuma's ending in Tekken 7 shows a contrast to his intimidating looking exterior to his more compassionate interior. Immediately after defeating the potential recruit Josie Rizal, Kuma was impressed enough with her skill to try to enlist her to the service. However, due to Josie being fearful of Kuma, a hilarious misunderstanding leads to her fainting out of terror despite Kuma's reassurance. Throughout the series, Kuma has been portrayed to be more intelligent than a normal bear. He could understand humans and even develop complex feelings like love. His rivalry with Paul Phoenix remains a major part of his character, though it's noted that Kuma mysteriously dropped out of the 7th tournament. Additional Kuma in Tekken 7 adds more depth to the character, as he shows not only a pet and personal bodyguard of Heihachi, but also a capable member of the Tekken Force with his problems and responsibilities. Interactions against the characters like Josie Rizal often lead to comic situations which show him trying to adapt to certain human social situations.
Get away from me! Don't eat me!
Now, let's head over to Miguel. In Tekken 7, Miguel's drive is thrown into disarray when Jin Kazama suddenly appears into thin air. Without his target, his reason for living seems lost when he wanders aimlessly through the war-torn areas. But fate happens when he finds himself unexpectedly coming across a hooded man who is actually Jin himself. Miguel's ending in Tekken 7 shows the complexity of his revenge. After defeating Jin, Miguel is furious to see that Jin does not even recognize him. He brutally assaults Jin, reminding him of his sister that he had eliminated. When Jin asks Miguel to finish him off, Miguel does something quite unexpected. Noticing how lifeless Jin had become, Miguel decides to spare him, not out of mercy, but because he knows Jin has not suffered enough. He says that he will delete Jin when his life is filled with hope and that the suffering for his sister's death will last longer. This ending develops several aspects of Miguel's character, including the following: his deep-seated anger and urge for revenge, his view of justice and punishment, the internal conflict between his desire for immediate vengeance and his wish to inflict lasting suffering on Jin. Since the Tekken series, Miguel has been shown as a hot-headed, rebellious character with a tragic story. His storyline in Tekken 7 gives more depth to his motives, developing that his revenge is not as black and white as the world painted it.
¿No me reconoces? No, supongo que no. Mishima Zaibatsu mató a mi hermana en un ataque aéreo como si no fuera nada. Lo haré, pero no ahora. Aún no ha sufrido lo suficiente como para merecer la muerte. No, todavía no. No hasta que estés lleno de esperanza. Entonces te mataré como si no fueras nada. No te atrevas a morir hasta que llegue ese día.
Now, it's off the pro boxer, Steve. The story of Steve Fox in Tekken 7 furthers his identity and troubled relationship with his biological mother, Nina Williams. Steve was a world-renowned boxing champion, born in the Mishima Zaibatsu research facility through artificial creation. Even though he gained so much success in the ring, he still remained motivated by uncovering the truth about his origins. In Tekken 7, Steve's search leads him to Nina Williams, whose name cropped up time and again in his search. Following a lead, Steve finds Nina at a cathedral, who appears to be running away. Not wanting to let this chance slip away, Steve confronts her. This sets the stage for their confrontation. Steve's ending in Tekken 7 is quite dramatic as it reveals something about his past. This includes Steve finding out from defeated Nina that he was a result of the Mishima Zaibatsu Super Soldier Project, using her DNA. Nina informs him of how most of the children in the experiment died, and Steve is one of the survivors who made it through, saying that she had just learned recently about her part in this project. In a surprise twist, this brings an emotional climax when Steve realizes Nina is, in fact, his real biological mother. However, Nina makes it very clear in a very cold manner that she couldn't care less about him and that he shall never be her son. That rejection shows the fickle and strained relationship between them. The scene spirals into action rather quickly as the soldiers of Tekken Force attack. Steve's actions of staying behind to fend them off while Nina gets away show his character's bravery and maybe even the hope for connection with his mother. He was the mysterious past poser of a great boxer throughout Tekken. His story deepens in Tekken 7, adding some great realistic touches, identity, family, and ethical issues driving genetic experimentation. The knowledge about his origin and his fraught relationship with Nina gives the great background to his continued participations in the King of Iron Fist tournament.
My earliest memory is of a Mishima Zaibatsu laboratory. I don't even know who my parents are. The only one I remember is Dr. Kleeser. She was always nice to me. I infiltrated the Mishima Zaibatsu, and for several years siphoned out intel. Unfortunately, none of it really led anywhere. But your name did come up, time and time again. So tell me, what's your connection to the lab? To me?
Those labs were used by the Mishima Zaibatsu to create super soldiers. Their goal was to physically and genetically engineer the ultimate soldier. Of course, it all ended in failure. But judging by your left arm, you must be one of the survivors. At the time, the Mishima Zaibatsu had captured me and forced me into cryosleep. It's only recently that I discovered my genes were used in their experiments.
Wait, so does that mean you are my mother?
Don't get the wrong idea. You'll never be my son. I couldn't care less about you. If anything, you're a thorn in my side.
Get out of here. I'll take care of this.
Now it's time for the assassin turned soldier, Nina herself. Her story in Tekken 7 still keeps on showing just how complex her character is and how she's involved in the whole ongoing conflict of the Mishima family. After failing to capture Jin Kazama, Nina leaves the Mishima Zaibatsu to pursue freelance assassination work. Her first job involves infiltrating a mafia wedding by posing as the bride. During the ceremony, she deletes her target and as a result attracts attention of the Tekken Force. While fleeing from the Force, Nina encounters Steve Fox, her biological son, and plants the seed for their inevitable confrontation. In Tekken 7, Nina's ending is nothing short of brutality. After defeating Steve, she's met by the Tekken Force. Equipped with a knife and a flash bomb, She deletes all the agents and leaves her knocked out son behind to make her getaway. In story mode, Nina is initially depicted as the head of the Mishima Zaibatsu since Jin has gone missing. Shortly, Heihachi Mishima returns and defeats her, making her his employee. She then starts assisting him in various missions like hiring serious marksmen and finding Jin. The situation gets a little bit more confusing afterwards when she discovers that Lars Alexanderson has hidden Jin. She leads an attack to retake Jin from Violet Systems, but is outmaneuvered by Li Xiaolan. The attack concludes with Nina surviving the destruction of the Violet System building. In Tekken 7, Nina's character is further developed. Her interactions with Steve Fox and her shifting allegiances within the Mishima family conflict add layers to her story. Despite her cold exterior, moments of curiosity and even amusement, as seen in her final decision to watch how events unfold, reveal a more nuanced character beneath the assassin's facade. Now, for the last two characters, I'm going to combine them because they are the main ones at the center of the story. Kazuya Mishima and Heihachi Mishima. Heihachi Mishima and Kazuya Mishima are the cornerstone characters of the Tekken series, their tireless relationship serving as the primary driving force behind the franchise's intricate narrative. Their importance goes far beyond their roles of powerful fighters. They show the core themes of family conflict, corruption of power, and a struggle between humanity and supernatural forces that define the Tekken universe. The Tekken storyline basically revolves around the father-son rivalry between Heihachi and Kazuya, which covers generations, notably drawing in another key character, Jin Kazama, Kazuya's son, and Heihachi's grandson. This familiar conflict is not personal but global, as the struggle for the control of the Mishima Zaibatsu and G Corporation reflects larger themes of corporate power and worldwide influence. But more important to their conflict would be the Devil Gene, indeed, a supernatural device Kazuya inherits from his mother, Kazumi, an innate anomaly that adds layers upon layers to their struggle into one between human nature versus demonical power. It further used to be a source of enormous strength and a sort of curse, blurring boundaries between hero and villain and questioning the perceptions of good and bad of the characters, and for that matter, the players. Heihachi and Kazuya are gray morality characters where their actions and motivations constantly change along the course of events. Cruelties by Heihachi include throwing the young Kazuya off the cliff as part of the misguided attempt to protect the world from the threat as the Devil Gene. Kazuya, initially sympathetic and driven by a will for revenge, gradually surrenders his demonic power, becoming ruthless and power-hungry. This development of the character adds depth to the development of the story and can captivate players over generations of games. Their story comes to a very dramatic climax in Tekken 7. The game goes deep into Heihachi's past and his relationship with Kazumi, the roots of his paranoia and actions. Kazuya finally gives in to his devil form and shows his true nature to the world. Their final confrontation at the volcano represents the culmination of their lifelong struggle, with Kazuya ultimately emerging victorious and seemingly ending Heihachi's life. The death of Heihachi at Kazuya's hands is one of those plot twists in the series. It might have just created room for the next cast, but it also leaves so much to be seen on what happens in the world of Tekken due to this conflict. Given its history of twists and upturns, however, that remains to be awaited in the series to come. The uneasy relationship between Heihachi and Kazuya wraps around family, power, and the supernatural, entwining them together and ultimately making them pivotal in the Tekken narrative. It oozes almost every corner of in-game story interaction, cementing their status as two of the most important figures in fighting game history. This is a still developing legacy with how things are in the Tekken universe. The effects of that will likely last very long after their final battle.
貴様とのざれ言も今日で終わりじゃ。
貴様から全てを取り戻す。
Tekken 7 builds on the success of its predecessors and offers an abundance of new mechanics in depth to make the game even more thrilling. It retains a strong 3D core fighting system, placing high demands on fighting awareness, exact timing, and strategic deployment of each character's unique moveset. Highly modified, for instance, is Tekken 7's combo system. Most of the bound state that allow extended combos in previous iterations of the series have been removed. In place, Tekken 7 has the screw or tailspin mechanic. Screw moves send the opponent spinning in the air, allowing combo extensions to be done with them landing in a vulnerable state. The modification really allows much more creative combo routes and adds a whole new layer of strategy to jungle combos. Other than that, one of the major introductions to Tekken 7 is Power Crush. These are armored moves that allow the character to absorb the damage from mid and high attacks while continuing their attack. This mechanic offers a player a very powerful offensive tool in the most pressed situations, but is dangerous because of the moves of the Power Crush are vulnerable to low attacks and throws. First introduced in the earlier games of Tekken, the rage system has been taken forward in Tekken 7. If a character is below the health threshold, then that character automatically activates his rage mode to increase the damage. During this period, two strong techniques become available to the player: rage arts and rage drives. The former are super moves with great damage in an artistic way, while the latter are powerful versions of the visual moves that will result in a long combos or some other tactical advantage. Tekken 7 also introduces new stage mechanics. Wall bounce, added in Season 2, allows for certain moves to bounce the opponent off the wall, allowing for combo extensions. Floor breaks and balcony breaks return, now causing an effect similar to a tag assault where the opponent is flung up instead of being bound. The in-game movement mechanics have been adjusted, with characters now taking larger strides when walking backwards. This will influence the tempo and distancing of the matches. Other new camera effects include dynamic slowdown on trades and slow-mo effects during potentially match-ending exchanges that adds the visual flair and tension of fights. Tekken 7 also boasts a more accessible auto combo system that lets players, especially newer ones, create basic combos with just rapidly hitting one button. Of course, this system, accessible on and off in options, tries to keep the game more accessible for a wider audience without losing some depth for the seasoned fighter. First, as DLC, it also gets a fun and casual component with the return of Tekken Bowl, a completely reimagined classic in more authentic Tekken style, with very realistic bowling, letting users take their favorite Tekken characters onto the lanes themselves for a roll or two. Overall, the gameplay is interesting. There are a total of 3 different ports other than the arcade version of Tekken 7. The game was released for the Sony PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Microsoft Windows. The PS4 port of Tekken 4 brought some exciting exclusive features that enhanced the gaming experience. One of the standout elements is its compatibility with PlayStation VR, allowing players to immerse themselves in a virtual reality setting, which adds a unique twist to the traditional fighting game format. Additionally, the PS4 version includes special content not available in the arcade release. Although specific details about these bonuses were kept under wraps initially, the port also benefits from improved graphics thanks to the use of Unreal Engine 4, resulting in smoother gameplay and more detailed character models. Overall, the PS4 aimed to provide a more complete and engaging experience for home gamers, setting it apart from its arcade counterpart. Alright, let's talk about the Xbox One version of Tekken 7. Unlike its PS4 counterpart, the Xbox One port doesn't have any exclusive features that really make it stand out. However, it does come with a pretty sweet deal for fans of the series. If you picked up a day one edition of Tekken 7 on Xbox One, you got a digital download of Tekken 6 thrown in for free, which is playable on the Xbox One thanks to backwards compatibility. That's like getting 2 Tekken games for the price of one. As for performance, it runs smoothly at 90 pixels and 60 frames per second, just like that on the PS4. Now, while we're on the topic, it's worth mentioning that the PS4 version did get some exclusive goodies like a PlayStation VR mode and some classic cartoon character costumes. But hey, if you're an Xbox fan or just prefer the Xbox controller for fighting games, the Xbox One version of Tekken 7 is still a solid choice for getting your Iron Fist tournament fix. Alright, let's talk about the Windows version of Tekken 7. This port is pretty exciting for PC gamers, as it is the first time the series has made its way to Windows. One of the coolest things about the PC version is that it can look absolutely stunning if you got the hardware to back it up. We're talking 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, if you got a beefy graphics card like the GTX 1080 Ti. Plus, it's actually $10 cheaper than the console versions, which is a nice bonus if you're trying to save money. The PC port also gives you more control over the graphics settings, so you can tweak things to get the best performance on your system. Now, while it doesn't have any exclusive content per se, the ability to mod the game on PC opens up some interesting possibilities for customization that you just can't get on consoles. Keep in mind that if you're planning to play competitively, the tournament scene is mostly focused on the PS4 version, but for the best visuals and some extra flexibility, the Windows port is definitely worth considering. When we look at the numbers, Tekken 7 scored pretty well across the board. Metacritic, which aggregates reviews from various sources, gave it a solid 82 out of 100 for both PS4 and PC versions, with the Xbox One version trailing just slightly at 81. That's definitely in the generally favorable category, which is pretty impressive for a fighting game. Critics had a lot of good things to say about the game. IGN, for instance, was particularly impressed, giving it a whopping 9.5 out of 10, calling it a hallmark fighting game that's both accessible and highly technical, which is quite a compliment in the fighting game world. Games Radar had also had nice things to say, awarding it a 4 out of 5 stars and describing it as a compelling, exhilarating experience. But it wasn't just professional critics who were digging Tekken 7. The game made a big splash in the competitive fighting game community too. It was a hit at major tournaments like EVO 2018, which really helped cement its place in the fighting game scene. Now, let's talk numbers, because Tekken 7 didn't just impress critics, it also sold like hotcakes. It topped the charts in several countries upon release, including the UK, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. Within just 2 months, it has sold over 2 million copies worldwide, which actually surpassed what the development team was expecting. Fast forward to December 2022, and the game has sold over 10 million copies, making it the best-selling Tekken game ever. That's pretty impressive for a series that has been around since the mid-90s. For longtime Tekken fans, Tekken 7 felt like a return to form. They appreciated the core gameplay remained largely unchanged. It still had that classic Tekken feel they'd grown to love over the years. The addition of new mechanics like rage arts and power crush moves added some fresh spice to the familiar formula without completely overhauling it. Many fans were also thrilled to see the Mishima saga come to a head, even if some found the story mode's execution a bit lacking. As for more casual gamers, Tekken 7 was generally seen accessible and fun. Even if you weren't a fighting game expert, the visuals were often praised. The game looks gorgeous, especially in motion. The larger roster of unique characters meant there was likely someone for everyone to enjoy playing. The slow motion finishes on close rounds were a particular highlight, adding drama and excitement to matches. However, it's worth noting that some newcomers found the game a bit intimidating to get into. Tekken 7 doesn't have the most comprehensive tutorial system, which could be frustrating for those trying to learn the ropes, but many found that once they got past the initial learning curve, the game was incredibly rewarding. One aspect that both veterans and newcomers seem to appreciate was the game's longevity. With this robust online play and the treasure battle mode, there was always something to do and a reason to keep coming back. So while it might have revolutionized the fighting game genre, Tekken 7 was generally seen as a solid, enjoyable entry in the series that managed to please both die-hard fans and newcomers alike. Its commercial success, selling over 10 million copies, suggests that it struck a chord with the wide audience. Now for criticisms. One of the biggest criticisms was aimed at the game's story mode. Many players found it to be underwhelming and frustrating. The difficulty spikes in the story mode were particularly annoying for casual players or newcomers to the series. If you lost a single round, you'd have to start the entire chapter over, which could be really frustrating. The option to lower the difficulty basically turned into a button mashing exercise, which didn't help players learn the game at all. Another common complaint was about the single player content in general. Once you finished the story mode, there wasn't a whole lot left to do if you weren't into online multiplayer. The treasure battle mode, while providing a way to unlock customization items, was seen as repetitive and not very engaging in the long run. Some longtime Tekken fans weren't thrilled with changes made to the gameplay mechanics. For instance, the slowing down of sidestepping made it harder to dodge attacks, which some felt reduced the strategic depth of movement that Tekken was known for. The reduction in damage for long juggle combos was also controversial among more competitive players. The lack of a comprehensive tutorial system was another sticking point. Tekken 7 doesn't do a great job of teaching new players how to play, which can make it intimidating for newcomers to get into. On the technical side, there's some issues too. The PC version, while generally well received, completely lacked mouse support, which made navigating menus a pain if you were using a keyboard. The game's massive file size, around 60 gigabytes, was also a point of frustration for some players if you had limited space on your hard drive. Lastly, as the game continued to receive updates, new characters, some players felt that the balance of the game was being thrown off. The controversy around Fahkumram and the changes to Kazuya's Hell Sweep moves are good examples of this. Overall, it has some ups and some downs. I have tried my best to leave my personal opinions out of this video, but it's time to get honest about Tekken 7. First, let me get one thing out the way. I'm no rookie when it comes to Tekken. You can check my channel and find 6 other videos covering the series, so it's safe to say I have a genuine passion for the franchise. But in the case of this game, it just feels a little empty. Allow me to explain. Story mode, for example, seemed to me like a bit more DLC material rather than something fully incorporated into a Tekken numbered series. For good comparison, take the remake of Resident Evil 3. It was enjoyable, indeed, but many claim that it was rather an addition to Resident Evil 2 than a separate piece of art, and that's precisely my attitude towards Tekken 7. I can appreciate how this would be a great game if one really enjoys online multiplayer. It's there that the game shines. For people like me, though, who like a deep single-player experience, this game doesn't cut it. There's no Tekken Force mode or anything significant to really keep you locked in for hours. The story mode, while graphically great to look at, is ridiculously short and is over in about an hour if you know your way around the controller. Character development, too, took a massive hit. Unlike previous entries like Tekken 4 where you'd play through arcade mode and uncover fascinating details about each fighter, Tekken 7 boils it down to 1 episode per character, just 1 fight. And not even all characters get that. Compare this to Mortal Kombat 9, where even guest characters had their own fleshed out stories. Look at Kratos from Mortal Kombat 9. He has a backstory that works into the game's canon. Here, it feels like the game structure revolves around downloadable content and seasonal updates. Which brings me to downloadable content, which I must talk about. You make people pay for characters like Anna Williams, Lei Wulong, Craig Marduk, and Armor King, among others. That just doesn't feel right to me. Anna and Nina's rivalry has been part of this Tekken series forever. And before you could unlock these characters by just playing as them, now you're gonna have to pay for them? I get it, it's the industry norm now. Microtransactions and DLCs rule the world. It still hurts though, and in my opinion, it's lazy. Developers can release a half-finished game and just keep having players pay for updates hidden as seasonal passes. The business side of it, well, makes a lot more sense to me from a broader perspective. For the longest time, the franchise of Tekken has gone through some ups and downs, especially after the release of Street Fighter Cross Tekken and Tekken Tag Tournament 2. It's smart marketing to have focused on crossover characters such as Akuma from Street Fighter, Negan from The Walking Dead, and even Noctis from Final Fantasy. But if those crossovers do nothing for you, then Tekken 7 can feel like it's missing something. What really bothers me is just how bare bones this game feels as a single player game. Older Tekken games will force you to grind in the in-game currency, unlock new characters, and then study their stories. That depth simply isn't in Tekken 7. So the name of this video, Long Recap Empty Game, points to two things. First, the game feels hollow despite its visual appeal. Graphics are good, but for those of us who grew up with retro games, they're not everything. Second, the story mode is essentially a long recap of Heihachi and Kazuya's history. I'm not against this approach. I've always said it's important to develop your villains as much as your heroes. However, here, there is no hero, but only two immensely flawed characters embroiled in their eternal combat. Fairly, there's stuff I liked. Finally learning the history of the Mishima family, and finally getting to see Kazumi's backstory was the highlight. I go back and forth with this game. I enjoyed every Tekken title to this day. Even Tekken 4 and its super dark tone is my favorite. I enjoyed Tekken 6's scenario campaign despite its criticism. Tekken 7 feels like a game that I can really enjoy if I was an online player. Check the Metacritic reviews, which sits at a 6.7 from over 1,000 users. I find myself agreeing with them more than the critics. That said, don't let my strong opinion sway you in any one direction. If you enjoyed this game, well, that's just fantastic. It's not a terrible game by any means. I've played some real disasters, trust me. But it's just not the game for me. My advice? Play through the entire series, form your own opinions. That way you'll appreciate the full journey and decide where Tekken 7 fits for you. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me to the end. I truly appreciate it. Starting a new year, I wanted to kick things off with something special for you all to enjoy. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm and supports the channel. If you're craving more Tekken content, be sure to check out my Tekken retrospective collection on the channel. Also, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you next week when we finally start the Mortal Kombat takeover. This is the Retro Phantom, signing out.